boundaries as a leader. I know this is a topic that many people quietly struggle with. And in this video, we are going to have a very good conversation about setting boundaries as a leader, especially as you are preparing for 2026. Now, this is a live video, and in this video, there will be some dialogue, some questions, and etc. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask me as it relates to setting boundaries as a leader, then let me know in the comments below. I will be live for an extended amount of time today so I can make sure that all the individuals that are the amazing leaders that are following and watching this video have some insight in terms of what you need to do to set your boundaries. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that I do have a couple of questions that were asked to me to answer on this live, and I'm going to go through a few of those questions today. Also, there's typically a point in the live where people will start to join the conversation. Therefore, give me just a few moments so that I can say hello to everyone, interact, and be able to answer some questions as it relates to how you can start setting your boundaries as a leader. We're going to talk about why boundaries are important, and then I'm going to go right into Q&A because I want to make sure I'm giving you as much insight as I can. I will share with you my own personal stories that I have had as it relates to setting boundaries, where I struggled and how I was able to overcome my struggles as it relates to setting boundaries. So if you have questions, let me know. If you're watching the replay or you're watching the live, feel free to just let me know what questions you have. There is no situation that is too complicated to share. And I know sometimes when you're in these roles and positions, especially maybe you're a woman in leadership, perhaps you're a man in leadership, and you're in these higher level roles where you just don't feel comfortable having that conversation about this is what I'm really struggling with. This is a place for you to talk about it. I am happy to give you any insights that I can. I've been in senior level leadership roles for over 20 years, and I'm here to help you in a way that I can on your journey. If it's really hard and complicated, I do pretty well with those. So just let me know what are some things you're struggling with specifically as it relates to setting these boundaries. And we're going to get into it today. So I want to say hello to those of you who have joined the live today. Feel free to let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you are joining from today and what questions. Let's talk about some real scenarios, some real challenges you're facing right now as leaders to help you be able to set some more boundaries as it relates to your career. So I want to say hello to Trotix, I'm going to say that. 8832 says, hi, can you please give me a shout out? My name is Maddie. I like and subscribe. Well, hello, Maddie. Welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Let me know what questions y'all have about setting boundaries. This is a very special live because I typically do not go live on my channel on Mondays. Today is my day where I have time to do that. I typically go live on my channel Tuesday through Friday, but I know that this week I'm not going to be live as much because it's Christmas here, and I want to make sure that I'm providing you all with some value, and I'm really here for you today. So if you have a really challenging, complex situation going on right now in your life as a leader and you need some insight in terms of, well, how do I set this boundary and etc., this is the absolute best place for you today. Feel free to share this video with any of your colleagues that perhaps are struggling as leaders in terms of setting those boundaries, because I'm going to be here for a while today. I have some juice and I have myself all situated, and I'm here really to support you any way that I can. So let me know what questions you have. No situation you're going to share with me is going to be too challenging. I've seen and done a lot. So just I want you to feel comfortable talking about things that you may not want to talk about with other people. All right, we have good boy YLBG says, hello, welcome. Hope you're doing well today. All right, so I'm going to start this off by why boundaries are important, and then I'm going to go into some questions that were provided to me previously that I want to go into and give some responses to those questions. And in the meantime, if something comes up for you on the live, then just let me know. I'm here to support you. I will answer any questions that you have as it relates to setting boundaries. And if there's something maybe you want to talk about as it relates to communication and you being a leader, then just let me know. I'm here for you today. I am very stationary. I'm going to be here for a long time, for a little while today, because I really want to make sure that you all are going into 2026 as leaders and that you're feeling very confident and comfortable with setting boundaries. Because what I've found that happens and why boundaries are so important is that people have these very big ideas and goals that they want to accomplish in the upcoming year. Now, for those of you watching, what are some of your goals for 2026? What are some goals that you have? What are some plans that you would like to accomplish? Maybe you want to transition into a new role or going to a new business? What is it? Just put it in the comments below. Let's talk today. Let's have a good conversation. So what are some things or some plans that you have for this upcoming year? What are they? Let's talk about it. And what I've seen that happens a lot of times, just from myself personally and working with other clients too, is that the reason why we are not able to accomplish some of these goals has a lot to do with the boundaries that we are setting. And what happens is that sometimes we are not able to set those very important boundaries as leaders, and other things start to take over our lives, so to speak, and we're just not able to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish because there's certain boundaries that we did not set. So let's talk about it a little bit. We have Miroslava. Let me make sure I have your name correct, friend. Let me read it for just a second. So Miroslava Slaver Aldi. I know I did not say that correctly. I'm sorry, Miro. Says, when you become unbreakable, life becomes easy. Miro, that is a fantastic statement, and I just appreciate you bringing that very powerful insight to our live today, because when you become unbreakable, life is easy. And one of the ways that you can become unbreakable, and I really like that term, Miro, is by setting boundaries. You have to build yourself up to be that person that's unbreakable. And I know many of you have been through situations and challenging situations probably in the past that felt like they could have broken you, but you're able to do a lot more with your specific role in your career because you've built those barriers to prevent you from becoming breakable. So Mira, I appreciate you so much for bringing that up today. I really appreciate you so much for talking about that. And boundaries is a great way to start developing yourself as unbreakable, because you have to know yourself very well to build up those boundaries. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. I want to say hello to Connor England 7235. Hope you're doing well today. Miro says that takes time. It does. It does. And one other thing, Miro, that it also takes too is consistency, because we have different things that happen to us all the time. And the way we respond, if we respond the same way for the most part and be very consistent about our responses, it does help us to start building that boundary. For example, you have a situation that comes up, maybe you're a professional, you're in the workplace and etc., and someone tells you something that's going to make you upset. Now, your first response could be to go off on that person easily, just like that. You could just go off on that person. However, it takes a bit more discipline to make sure that this is something that you don't necessarily need to do. And being able to respond in a very calm way will actually help you tremendously in terms of being more consistency. And that takes time for you to do that. All right, so we have Baron Q3F says, hello, sister. Welcome, Baron. And we have someone saying something inappropriate, so we're just going to keep moving. Baron Q3F says, where are you from, sister? I am from North Carolina. I'm from the United States of America, and I am in the Sunshine State of Florida. All right, so we have, let's see. So I'll say this, and then people are going to come in the live and say some inappropriate things. And for those of you watching the replay, you don't see what's coming up, but I do. And for those watching, I'm glad that you all are here. I'm really here to help you all, and I'm really here to help change your life. When there's comments that come about, things that are inappropriate or things that are offensive and etc., I will hide them from the comments. This is a very serious live because I want you all to do really well this upcoming year. And having detracting trolls in the comments saying silly stuff, I'm just going to completely ignore it today because we have a lot of stuff to cover. Baroon Q3F says, from Manipur, sister. Well, welcome, and says happy Christmas. Well, Merry Christmas to you, Baroon. I appreciate you being here. And let me know what questions you all have about setting boundaries today. So as I mentioned, we talked about being unbreakable for Miro, and we also talked about that it takes time to set these boundaries. So people sometimes get frustrated when they set boundaries with someone and they go over the boundaries and they set them again and they go over again. It takes time for people to understand that you are specifically in a place where you are making sure that you're setting those boundaries specifically. All right, so we have Baroon says, Manipur, Myanmar, Thailand border, sister. Okay, awesome. Very good. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Now, we talked about the boundaries a bit in terms of why they're important. You have to be able to set those boundaries to become that unbreakable person as best as you can be. There's always things that's going to happen in life that will be unexpected, but this is just a part of it. But boundaries themselves are really important to help you be able to shape how, one, you want to live your life and how other people are going to be treating you. And it's really important for you to be able to do that. So keep in mind, boundaries are really important. Now, I'm going to say hello to everybody who's joining in the chat. And I do want to go ahead and start going into questions that I received offline as it relates to setting boundaries. If you all have questions specifically as it relates to setting up boundaries as you are in your leadership roles, let me know. Let's talk about it. I'll share with some insight with you in terms of what I've done that I found successful. And I'll share with you the very contentious times I've actually had in terms of setting boundaries as well. Let's talk about it today. We have Pratik Galatkar 1011. Welcome, Pratik. Welcome back, friend. Hope you're doing well. Pratik Galatkar 1011 says, how are you doing? I'm doing fantastically well, friend. I'm really excited to be here with y'all today. This is definitely going to be a longer live today because this is a special day for me. My vehicle's being wrapped today, so I really don't have too much that I can actually do at the moment. So I want to make sure that I'm providing you all with as much value as I can as we're transitioning into 2026. We have Ender Jogo. Hello. Hope you're doing well. MK Dala 6 Champ VAR says your beauty leaves me speechless. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the heart emojis as well. And so there's a couple things. Let's talk about some questions I had as it relates to boundaries. So the first question, and because I told my audience that members that joined, I would give them a screenshot in terms of when or timestamp when I talk about these questions. So here's one that I want to talk about. And let me make sure nothing else is going on in the chat first really quickly. We have Pagal Punjabi 5434 says, how are you? Where are you from? I am from the United States of America, and I am in the Sunshine State of Florida. Let me know where you're joining from. And for those of you who are watching, I appreciate the heart emojis. Let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you all are joining from today and some questions you all have specifically as it relates to setting boundaries. Let's talk about today. We have Dinesh Gupta, C4V88 says hi. And we have Pagal Punjabi 5434 says, wow, you know Punjabis. I do not know Punjabi. I do not know Punjabi, but I'm just reading the name. But let me know what part specifically you're joining from. I appreciate the heart emojis, friends. And any questions you all have about boundaries, this is really for you all today. We've been joining and we've been talking so much this year, this month specifically in December as it relates to setting boundaries. And I really want to be able to help you all on your journey. We have KNSHK38. So it says, stop ignoring me. I'm not. This is the first time I've seen your name, so I apologize. But I'm looking very closely at the chat. But hello and welcome. We have Abayomi Ayomide. S4X says, hi, how are you? I'm doing fantastically well. Let me know what questions you all have about setting boundaries. And let me know how I can help you. Give me some hard, challenging situations you're dealing with, and I will give you some really good answers and give you some strategy in terms of how you want to say it. All right, we have Dinesh Gupta, C4V88 says, please support me. Well, let us know what you need specifically. KNSHK38 says something about integration of log. I'm not sure what you're referring to. And Abayomi says, I'm watching from Nigeria. Well, welcome. Glad you're here today. I appreciate you joining today. I know it's a little bit late in the evening right now. I believe Nigerian time and African time right now. So I appreciate you being here. So let me know what question you all have about setting boundaries. Let's talk about it. We have Apex Noob General 6877 says, hi, you are so gorgeous. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, friend. And let me know what questions you all have about boundaries. And if you like this topic so far, you absolutely want to join my channel or subscribe to my channel. I talk about advanced level communication skills all the time and how you can communicate at a higher level than your peers. So this is what I do. So you absolutely want to ask me any questions as you can. We have Julian Heredia 2334 says, hi, you are beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Julian. Hope you're doing well today. All right, so let's go into first question that I received. Number one question that one of my One of an individual I work with specifically, as a client, asked me and told me to just mention it specifically on this channel, and I'm going to read it because I do have a couple of notes for the questions. And the question was, how do you detach yourself from a job without being unprofessional? This goes around setting boundaries. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a few. So we have Apex Noob General 6877 says boundaries like personal boundaries or global boundaries. Well, today specifically, I'm focusing in on boundaries as it relates to you being a leader. There's a couple categories of boundaries that I tell people about specifically to work on for this upcoming year. And I'm going to go into the 5 categories, and you let me know in the comments below if there's one of these categories where you feel like, this boundary I need to really work on. Are you ready? And this is just from my past 20 years of doing this. So let me know what you think about these 5 boundaries. First is your time boundary, your money boundary, your energy boundary, your professional boundary, and your personal boundary. Which of those boundaries do you feel like you might need to work on a little bit this year? Let's talk about it in the comments below. And if you have a specific situation coming up for you that you want to talk about in this live, then let me know in the comments below. All right, let me say hello to a few more individuals, and then I'll go into the very first question that I received, and then I have another question from an audience member as well to help them be able to move forward in this as well. All right, so we have Abayomi says, is it only how to communicate with parents, or partners too? Well, the information I focus on, Abayomi, is heavily focused on leaders and really communicating at that higher level. However, a lot of the information that I'm going to share with you, especially on my channel, if you watch some of my live videos, they are very specific to leadership and being able to communicate with teams and etc. Now, I will say that I use these same strategies and techniques with family members and business partners and etc. So the information I'm sharing with you, it is for leaders. I'm going to focus more on the leadership aspect of things. However, I do want to also mention that you can use this information in other types of settings as well, depending on who you're talking to, because I'm really helping you to communicate at a higher level than your peers. And you can use this in any setting that you have, whether you are in a leadership role, maybe you are doing something with a group or organization, or communicating with your peers or your loved ones. Sky Blue Eye says, Merry Christmas, Sky Blue Eye. Appreciate you being here. Pratik Galatkar 1011 says, I have a POV that if boundaries are so healthy, why do most people avoid them? Okay, so that's a good question, and I'm going to actually take note of that because we're going to talk about that today. Also, Pratik Galatkar, we have a lot of things to cover, and that's a really great question. And I always appreciate your wonderful insights as well. All right, Sky Blue Eye says energy and personal boundaries. Okay, so we got a couple boundaries we need to work on specifically for Sky Blue Eye. So Sky Blue Eye, what are some things that you feel like are taking away your energy that are causing you to struggle with your personal boundaries? Let's talk about that, and we'll give you some good insight for you to work with today. I'm going to move my light here for just a second, so bear with me. I promise I'm not going to drop everybody, but I have to just kind of readjust my light here. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. Apex Noob General 6877 says, oh my God, that's hard. Okay, let's see. Oh my God, that's hard. Feel like every boundary is necessary to me. Laugh out loud. I feel like I need to focus more on energy boundaries. Okay, so let's talk about it, Apex. We got energy boundaries. Energy boundaries has came up twice. I'm going to give you some insight on energy boundaries. We're going to talk about that. Pratik Galatkar wants to know why do people avoid boundaries? I'm going to definitely go into that as well. And we have Abayomi says, okay, then I will have to listen attentively so I can gain something here. You will gain something here, Abayomi, for sure. Absolutely. So let's go into it. So the first question I had was about detaching yourself from a job without being a professional. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second because you all came up with some really good things that I want to talk about, and I'll go into that as well. So Pratik Galatkar, let's talk about, and miraculously Lay says, I love your tree. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I appreciate the heart emojis. So let's start with Pratik Galatkar first, because this is a great way to start the live as it relates to setting boundaries. And as I mentioned, this is a longer live for me. I typically go live, for those of you who are new to me, this is not my live day. Mondays are typically not my live day. I'm typically live Tuesday through Friday in the morning and in the evening time here in the United States on the Eastern Standard Time Zone. Today is a special live, and today is typically when I'm not here, but you're welcome to, if you can't stay for the whole live, because I plan on being here for a long time today, because I want to help you all. But if you can't stay for the entire live, don't worry, there will be a replay. And if you have a question specifically and I don't get to it, I'll take a screenshot and I'll put it in my communities tab so that you know when I talk about your question specifically. And all you need to do is just let me know, I have this question, I have to go, and I'll take a screenshot, and in my communities tab, I'll post on there, let's say Sky Blue Eye. And we talked about energy boundaries. This is your timestamp of when I talk about yours. So if you have to run and you say I have to go, just let me know and I'll do something for you, because this is a longer live, and well, we're going to be here for a while. And I know you all have other things you have to do, but I want to make sure I help you. So to kick us off, I think Pratik Galatkar has a really great question. Why, if boundaries are so healthy, why do most people avoid them? The reason why people typically avoid boundaries comes down to a couple things. And I thank you for the heart emojis. The first reason why people avoid boundaries is because it is something that people don't know exactly what they need. And I know that sounds a little odd, but really, people have to really think about, well, what kind of boundary do I need? Most of the time, we just get very overwhelmed as individuals and even as leaders. It's just everything, right? Everything's just too much. It's just too much for everything. And we don't take that time to think, what boundary is it that I'm struggling with? Which is the reason why I mentioned those 5 categories of boundaries as a professional for you to think about. Because who comes to you and says, hey, by the way, are you struggling with this boundary, or this boundary? And you would say, yeah, I am actually. But if I didn't actually mention that, you may not have thought about it so much. So that's one of the reasons why, thank you for the heart emojis, is that people just are simply not sure of what boundary they need to set. So if you don't know what boundary you need to set, then how can you set it? Sometimes you just feel like people are just taking advantage of you. Well, what does that mean specifically? Are they taking too much of your time? Are they taking too much of your energy? Are they impacting your finances? What is it? Sometimes we need to dive deep. And that's what I do in an executive coaching session with the women in leadership that I work with, is to really dive deep and figure out, what is it exactly? How can we help you move forward? So why do most people avoid boundaries? So that's number one. Sometimes, particularly people just don't know what they need. They don't know what boundaries they need to set. They just know they're stressed out and frustrated and they just don't know how to fix it. Number two is that, generally speaking, people do not like conflict. And sometimes what happens when you have to set boundaries, there is a point in time where the conversation may not be as friendly as it normally is. And I thank you for the heart emojis, because people are just by nature, they don't want to have a conflict. They don't want to, I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't want to cause any problems, or etc. And they just keep living life the way they live it, because we just intuitively are just not comfortable with that. Now, if you have subscribed to my channel or you're watching any of my videos whatsoever, you know that is not my wish for you. I want you to be comfortable having conversations even when you're under pressure. And that's my main focus here on my channel, is really helping leaders communicate confidently and concisely under pressure. I work specifically with women in leadership in my executive coaching and consulting practice. But on YouTube here, I have women in leadership, I have men in leadership, I have people that are thinking about leadership, and I want to help you regardless. And being able to communicate when you're under pressure is one of the reasons why, particularly at CAR, people do not feel comfortable and avoid setting boundaries, because it's that level where they just they're not comfortable dealing with conversations under pressure. Now, we are not taught this as individuals, and oftentimes as leaders, we're not taught this as well. So keep this in mind. These are the 2 reasons that I have seen. If you all think there's other reasons why people avoid setting boundaries, and let's talk about it. Put them in the comments below. But I would say my top 2 reasons are because people, one, are not comfortable. The first, they don't know what they need. They don't know what boundaries they need to set. And then number 2, they're just not comfortable having that conversation. So let me know what you all think about that as well. Let me go into the chat. We have Lit Kira says hello from Brazil and happy holidays. We'll appreciate that. And we have another person. I don't know how to say the name specifically, but it says, where are you from? I am from the United States, based out of the Sunshine State of Florida right now. Apex Noob General says Apex Noob General 6877 says, yep, actually, I don't know about my boundaries. Never set those. It's confusing once my mind hits the shock when I was about to get in trouble with a person twice my age. Yes, and sometimes we just don't know. We don't know exactly what we want to do and how we want to do it and what we should do. And so, yes, that can actually cause you a lot of challenges as it relates to setting, let me adjust myself a little bit, and setting your boundaries. So I appreciate you so much, Apex Noob General 6877, for mentioning that, because it can be pretty stressful there. Now, we talked about a couple things, so we're going to go back to Apex Noob General mention about energy boundaries, I believe, and Sky Blue Eye said energy and personal. So let me make sure. I think I got that. So I'm just writing those down because I want to make sure you all leave here with something today to help you not struggle with these boundaries as much. Particular Car 1011 says, thank you for answering the question. Please make a YouTube short so on this question specifically, because it will really help more people who deal with this question. Okay, I will. What I'll do is when I finish up with this live, I use Opus Clips for those of you who are content creators just like I am. I use Opus Clips and I import my videos into Opus Clips, and Opus Clips creates the actual short for it. So if it does not create a specific short for that, then I will make sure that I am going to go ahead and do a short for you. So particular Car, I appreciate that. All right, we have Connect Peak says, hello, Connect. Olive Juice 2024, welcome, good morning. I have your question. Your question is number 2 on my list. I'm coming up to it. But Olive Juice 2024 says, good morning. The person I'm training doesn't retain boundaries, and she is in her first 90 days. She doesn't respect my calendar, time, and then I get so frustrated when she keeps doing things wrong. Okay, let's talk about it. So Olive Juice, we have 2 things to talk about for you today. And if you have to run, friend, let me know, and I'll make sure I'll send you a screenshot for the timestamp because I know you're super busy. So we're going to talk about that. Also, we have a lot to talk about today. So there's a couple things that came up, and I'll talk about these very briefly. For Sky Blue Eye, when you're trying to conserve your energy and your personal boundary, there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind. And Apex Noob General, this is for you too, especially as it relates to energy. Your energy boundary, how do you set that? You have to know exactly what is it specifically that is taking your energy away. So for instance, if you know there's a task or something that you have to do specifically, and it is going to require you to just use a lot of energy to do it, and you're going to be very tired afterward, then you have to determine, is this task or is this situation or this conversation, is it worth my energy right now? Really, is it worth my energy right now? Am I going to be in a better place by dealing with this now? Or do I have other things, other situations that are much more important that require my full energy than what I need to deal with? That is a way I protect my energy boundary. There's a lot of things that I personally don't deal with because I feel like it's going to take too much of my energy. So for instance, if I have a situation in the past where I worked as a C-suite executive or director where somebody has a conversation or they want me to pull out a bunch of data for something, for a project that is not really a project, it's just the information they just wanted to know just because they were curious, I would say, okay, I don't have the energy to do that right now, nor am I going to. I have other projects I need to work with. So that would be put off to the side, and I would communicate with the person and say, what's the specific time frame that you need this data by? Because it's not, I just know I'm going to use a lot of my energy to do it. So why am I going to stop and drop everything, essentially, and put all of my energy into something that I know is not worth my time right now? I have other things I need to deal with. And so just making sure you communicate in a professional setting. You don't want to just like put it off and say, well, forget it. I don't want to, I'm never going to do it. Sometimes you may want to do that. I've done that before, depending on how ridiculous it was. But I would say just really think about how much energy it's going to take you to do this. Every task is not the same. Every conversation is not the same. If it's a conversation you have to have, like for instance, Olive Juice 2024 is talking about the person they're training is not retaining boundaries. There's some conversation you have to have, but how much energy is going to take you to do that? If I know I'm having a difficult conversation with someone and I know it's going to be contentious, I purposely will schedule it on a day when I don't have a ton of crazy things going on. Or if I know something came up and I need to talk about it and it's urgent, then I will either determine I'm going to talk about it today or I'm going to talk about it the next day. Literally, depending on what it is and how much energy I feel like I need to expend on it, that really determines quite a bit. So just keep that in mind. That's a great way to protect your energy boundary, Blue Sky Eye and Apex Noob General. You have to think about what is it specifically that, what do you need to do? What energy do you need to put into this? When you have a conversation with somebody, a difficult conversation, there's energy that comes into that. There's no difficult conversation that does not have any energy that comes out of it. There is some. So do you need to have that conversation today? Do you? Sometimes we automatically think, oh gosh, I got to talk to them today. Well, sometimes you don't. You do not have to. Maybe you have to use your energy to do other things. Just keep that in mind. That's what I have done as a C-suite executive, and that is how I have been able to control my energy. And even now, even with interacting with different individuals, sometimes you work with people, you work with different clients that will test your boundaries. And you have to determine, even as a business owner, which I'm a business owner now, is this worth my time? And sometimes going back and forth with somebody is completely, most of the time, it's never worth your time. And it's never worth your energy too. So keep that in mind. Also, sometimes it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it because people don't really realize when you have to give out so much energy to do something and it's just a negative situation, it actually takes a lot more away from you than what you really would like for it to. So that's one thing for energy. Personal boundaries, a Blue Sky Eye. One of the things I did for personal boundaries is you have to become very strategic in terms of what you want to talk about specifically as it relates to your personal boundary. Now I have a lot of conversations about boundaries here on my live tab, but I also do have a boundary series. It's an older pre-recorded series I have on my channel as well. It's much, much older, but it talks about boundaries too. But personally, Blue Sky Eye, one of the things you want to consider as it relates to setting your personal boundaries is to determine what do people need to know about you and what do you not need people to know about you. And depending on what you come up with should dictate what you talk about in your professional settings. And if you feel like there's certain aspects of your life that are very personal and you don't want people to know about them, then don't talk about them. And just be very strategic in what you say and what you don't say. Because sometimes what I see people struggle with a lot, Blue Sky Eye, is that they'll talk too much about themselves personally to the point where they end up having just, they tell their personal business, and then when it comes back on them, people say, oh, they're like, why do they bring this up? Why do they use this against me? Type of situation. Well, be very careful in what you talk about in terms of your personal business. So I hope that gives you some insight there. Okay, so let me see what's going on in the chat. Olive Juice 2024 sent some hearts. Thank you so much. Alice Alexis 7121, welcome back. Welcome back. How you doing today? Use Maki says hello. I feel like you've been on the channel before, so hello and welcome. Olive Juice 2024 says, okay, that is helpful. Absolutely, I'm here to help any way that I can. Pratik Galatkar 1011 says, I would also want you to talk on some smart tips to set boundaries without ruining relationships as a leader. That's actually similar to the question that I was asked about setting boundaries and not ruining relationships, specifically when it's talking about how to detach from a job without being professional. So we can talk a little bit about that also, particular car. And as I mentioned, if you have to run, just let me know and I'll do a screenshot when I talk about that. Apex Noob General 6877 says, most of the time it's my overthinking and fear. Sometimes it's really hard to control it. I try my best to put on the required task. So when you think about it in that way, and first, Apex Noob General, I appreciate you so much for sharing that. And sometimes you're right. I mean, it's hard to control if you overthink. What I usually say when you're in those very heated moments and heated situations is to think of the situation as objectively as possible. Take the emotions out. Sometimes it's hard, depending on the situation. Sometimes it's hard to take those emotions out. But just think about it like the first question I tell myself, if I feel like there's a situation that's bothering me, I would say, what's the real issue here? Because what I may feel emotionally may not be the real issue. It may just be what I'm feeling. But what is the real issue here? And that will help you to start thinking about things in a more objective way. Take the emotion out. What's the real issue? Is it someone's crossing your time? They're crossing your boundaries? Like, what specifically is it that is happening that is not working out for you? And continue to do it every single day. This is something like what Miro said earlier. It takes time. It takes a lot of time to do this, and you just have to be consistent. If you feel like you're getting really emotional and you try to control yourself, but it's really hard to do, just think about what is the main issue? What's the real issue here? And then work and make a plan based on the actual real issue that you are actually dealing with. So we have Cohen Sims 9126 says true. Welcome, Cohen. I haven't seen you here before, so I hope you're doing well. So let's go ahead, since we have Olive Juice here, let's go into the question that was mentioned earlier about the person training doesn't retain boundaries, and she is in her first 90 days. Okay, let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about a couple other questions I have. She doesn't respect my calendar, time, and then I get so frustrated when she keeps doing things wrong. Okay. Olive Juice 2024. So for this person specifically, she's not retaining boundaries. So let's see. She doesn't respect your calendar, time, etc. Okay. So for this person you're training, she's in her first 90 days. And if there's a couple times when I see people not retain boundaries. Sometimes we kind of talked about this previously. Is it intentional or unintentional? I think that's what it comes down to. And it almost seems like we're getting borderline to intentional, because it's something that you've been having a conversation with this person about in terms of retaining their boundaries and etc. And it's really frustrating you. And this is something that honestly, this is a time, especially Olive Juice 2024, they're within their first 90 days. And for those of you who may not understand the leadership world, like Olive Juice 2024 knows, is that there's a probationary period, we call it, where we get to see how you work as an employee. You get to see how we work as an organization, company, business, whatever the case is. So you have to determine, is this a good fit for you? Is it a good fit for me? And that's what it is. The fact that she is within her first 90 days means that this is an opportunity for you to have a conversation with this person about that. There's a couple boundaries that they're not respecting. So your time, and you get frustrated when they keep doing things wrong. This is that scenario where we kind of talked about this before, having that conversation, like, how are things going with you? But then if you've already had this conversation and you said, how are things going? And you've been friendly about it initially, the second conversation you have should definitely be a bit more direct. Because the thing is, this person is wasting your time. Because you have already talked about this. You're training this person. They should get some of this information right. If they're not respecting your time, they're not respecting your boundaries, then now we have to figure out what's going on. And so this would definitely warrant a more direct conversation. And I would have the conversation as follows. Well, first outline what you need them to do. And you've mentioned this, and this is the wonderful part of your 90-day period, because the good thing is you're in your 90 days with this person. You want to document these situations that are going on. And so, for instance, I would say we talked a bit about setting boundaries a couple weeks ago, or we talked a bit about you doing this task a couple weeks ago, but I'm noticing that you're still struggling with it. Why is that? And let them talk. Why are they still struggling with this particular topic? Why are they struggling with it? And I would let them say whatever it is they need to say, and say, this is a time period for us to work with you to help you do well. This is an opportunity for us to get to know you, for you to get to know us. And at the end of 90 days, we determine, is this a good fit, or would you be better suited in a different department or whatever. It just depends on how this person is acting in terms of what you say. But I would have a conversation with that person. And this is probably conversation number 2, I'm thinking, I'm assuming. But if this is like your second conversation, then I'd definitely be more direct. And I would say, these are a couple things that we've talked about. Don't come into my office at this time, or don't interrupt me. Don't schedule things on my calendar when you don't need to, and etc. I want to understand, what else is it that what do you need help with? What are you struggling with? Because we want to make sure you are able to grasp this information as a trainee. And I always tell them, I do put this in when I'm having those more direct, more, I would say, firm conversations with someone. I'm still polite. I don't talk to them in a mean way. I really manage my tone of voice. And I know we talked about that too. But I still have that same tone of voice. But I let them know this is what the 90-day period is for. We're trying to understand we're trying to determine if you're going to be a good fit for us and we're going to be a good fit for you. So we want to make sure we're giving you every opportunity that you need to be successful. But there's some aspects of this role that we need you to improve as soon as possible. My calendar, my time, and whatever else it is that's going on. Now, the other thing is too, you want to be in communication with your HR department, because when you have somebody like that and they are already telling you that they're just not getting it, just keep HR in the loop. Keep HR in the loop, because if you are letting them know, then they know this person may not be a good fit. Just let them know. I've had situations, and I've done this mistake in the past, and I'm sharing with you what I have done that did not work out well. I have had situations in the past where I would have somebody in their time period. I'd have all these conversations with them, and I would determine before we got to 90 days, and I'd say, no, they're not a good fit. And I'd let HR know, and they're like, what? You didn't tell us anything. What happened? And so I learned, don't take from my mistake. I learned not to do that. I really keep HR in the loop, especially with somebody you're training like that, because I would let them know, I'm having conversations with this person. This is what's going on. I'm a bit concerned about how they're going to be a good fit, but I just want to keep you updated. So when you have that conversation, say with the trainee, and you say, maybe depending on how things go, this is not working out for us. We'll have to terminate employment. Then they already know, and they're not wondering what in the world happened here. I made that mistake. I've done that. And I will very candidly tell you, I've done that before, where I've just had the conversations and told HR, look, this person's not working out. And they literally have said, wait, what? What happened? Why didn't you let us know? And so I would definitely have a conversation with HR just to keep them in the loop. Okay, so we have Apex Noob General 6877 says, thanks a lot. That is very new knowledge to me. Do you write essays on it? This has to be printed. Well, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Well, actually, Apex Noob General 6877, I'm writing a book this upcoming year in 2026, and it's going to talk a bit about executive presence. So whenever I write that book, I will definitely be able to send it out on my social media accounts. Feel free to subscribe to my channel here on YouTube, and you'll get definitely a lot of insight on that. And I'll see if I can do some other things to help you with that. But yeah, boundaries it's a struggle, and it is one of those situations where you do have to communicate under pressure, and that's really my expertise in terms of being able to help you do that. Pratik Galakar 1011 says, yes, very true. And we have Itching to Scratch UK. Hello from Wales, UK. Welcome. How you doing today? And Itching Scratch UK says, thumbs up 12. Okay, you're number 12. Well, I appreciate you being here. And let me know what questions y'all have about setting boundaries. Anything that comes up for you specifically as it relates to setting boundaries, feel free to know. I will give you my honest guidance that I can help you dive a bit deeper in terms of why you're struggling with it. But let me know how I can help you. That's what I'm here for today in this special live, so I can get you all ready for 2026. I want you to do amazingly well this year, and I know how hard sometimes it is to set boundaries. And if you're watching live and watching the replay, just let me know. I'm here to help you in a way that I can. We have Ranty L80 says, Merry Christmas from Indonesia. Well, Merry Christmas. Hope you're doing well today. We have Bubby Live Jay. Can I work as a cleaner? Well, don't necessarily need to do that. I'm doing okay. Thank you though. Olive Juice 2024 says, okay, that was my next question about HR. I'm closest with the VP of HR. Do I reach out to her? Our junior HR employees gossip like crazy. Oh, yes, I know how it is in HR. You would be surprised how much gossiping goes on. And now, should I be telling you that as a former C-suite executive and senior leader? No, probably not. But yes, that's the reality. Some people are like that. The fact that you have a conversation, that you know and have a relationship with the VP of HR, that's who I would talk to. And I'm going to tell you something else too. I was just talking to my daughter about this, and it's something I wanted to mention to you all as well. As leaders, I want you all to get into the mindset and the habit of saying, who's the boss here? Because sometimes what happens when we have these situations that come up, we kind of think in order of hierarchy. Does that make sense? We feel like we need to talk to maybe the person that's at the bottom of the hierarchy, and that's no plight to saying like someone's better or worse than somebody else. I'm not saying that, but sometimes as a leader we feel as if we have to start at the very bottom. Oh, I need to communicate with this person. And I encourage you all to think, no, who's the person at top I need to talk to? Why? Because sometimes in these scenarios, you need to do that. So for instance, for Olive Juice 2024, I would absolutely talk to the person, the VP of HR in this particular case, because that's the person who's going to end up doing this situation anyways. They're the senior leader. And when you're at the point you're saying this person is not working out, they're not doing what we need them to do, then you will end up having to communicate with that person anyways. So I would definitely have a conversation, because this trainee sounds like they're stressing you out. That's what it sounds like. They're stressing you out to me, because we've talked about this trainee, and I don't want you stressed out, friend. I don't want you stressed out at all. So I definitely would have that conversation and just let VP of HR know what you've done. What HR is going to want to know from you is, have you given her as many opportunities as possible to be successful? Is there some additional training that she needs, and etc. Another thing that I found may be helpful for you as it relates to talking to your VP of HR is to also let them know that typically, because you're training this person, you've trained other individuals. I know you're a leader. So typically, individuals that are in these roles have mastered these tasks by this specific time frame. However, this trainee is not mastering these tasks. So that gives a objective perspective in terms of how this person doing. Now, there may be a part of that where you feel emotional about it because this person is frustrating you. Don't let that part come out. Don't let them know about that. Be as objective as you can about the situation. One, I've given this person multiple opportunities to improve. We've given this trainee additional training, or we've given the trainee additional support. And I found that at this time period, most of our trainees would have mastered this by now, but this person still struggles with it. As long as you talk to the VP of HR without the emotion to it, the frustration, they are more receptive to saying, okay, Olive Juice 2024 is struggling with this person. This is what they may say I recommend for you to do. Come back and have a conversation with me in a week or so, and let's determine if we need to move forward or if we need to terminate this person. That's what I've done. I mean, I've done this. I've worked with HR so closely in the roles I've been in senior leadership, because I've been a senior leader. That's typically what they want. They want to make sure we've given them the opportunities, unless they're doing something like completely egregious. Like if they're doing something completely egregious, then they're going to say, they're going to say, no, we're going to go ahead and separate and terminate their employment. But just make sure that you're going, when you talk to them, you're being as objective, as possible to talk to them about that. And that's what I would do. That's a great way to help you be able to set yourself up for success, because ultimately, if this person is not working out, they're not working out. You just need HR to know this person's not working out. So when I call you and say, hello, VP of HR, this person is not working out, can we fire them, please? Then they'll say, okay, yes, we need to go ahead and do that. So just keep that in mind. That's what I would do. And yes, avoid the junior HR employees, because they gossip. Olive Juice 2024 says, can you tell us about how you learned it the hard way? Yes, I will. I will absolutely tell you that. Make sure to see if anybody else is here. I'll tell you that in just a moment. Olive Juice 2024 says, yay to the book. Well, and said congrats. Thank you. I'm working on it right now. Nawal Nabar, hello, ma'am. I'm used to people who read chats. Yes, I do that also. Apex Noob General 6877 says, yes, when there are others that affect my energy and time, I usually avoid to interact with them. And if that troubles me, I just say to myself, I can't control their actions, don't worry. High five, friend. Exactly. That's a really great insight to have. As you start to elevate as a leader, you do start to limit who you interact with, because sometimes your energy is just not worth it. And I don't want you to feel like I want you to be arrogant. That's not the case. But you have to be very, very mindful of how you spend your energy. So I appreciate you so much for mentioning that, Apex Noob General 6877. That's a great insight. Noel Nubar says, I don't celebrate Christmas, sadly. Well, that's okay. That's all right. It's no problem. I'm glad that you stopped by. Corel O8B says, you look like Jeanette Huss. I don't know who that is. Noel Nabar says, you are beautiful. And Itching to Scratch UK says, hello. All right. Well, welcome. Well, let me know if you have any questions as it relates to boundaries. We're going to go back to Olive Juice 2024's question about, can you tell us about how you learned it the hard way? Okay, I've done this twice. I've done this a couple times as a mistake. And this is why I want you to learn not to do it. I've been a director, I've been a C-suite executive, so I've been in those senior level roles for a long time. And I would say in those roles, I typically was the leader that was able to come in and make changes pretty quickly. And people kind of just let me do what I needed to do. Like, I didn't have a lot of pushback and, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Not so much. Maybe initially when you start, because people are getting to know you, but ultimately people would just say, okay, I know that Jacinta's got this and we'll just let her just run with it. Well, what happened is I had a couple of employees, and these are individuals that I actually hired. And so specifically in my role, when I was working as a dentist, I have to hire people to make sure that they're taking care of their patients and they're doing everything like they're supposed to be doing to keep people safe. And it's very, very important. We have to have that. So what would happen is I would hire people, or people at the front office or etc. And I have my time period. And so initially I wasn't as structured as I am now. And that's the reason why I mentioned to you about the assessments, having a time frame of where this person should be at this level of the journey and etc. I didn't have all that before. It was just based on how they were performing. So what happened is I'd have a couple of employees, and they would come in, depending on the role they were in, that they just were not doing what they wanted to do. They were frustrating me because, just like you said, they were just not getting things together. They were not where they needed to be. And I would have the verbal conversations with them, right? I would talk to them, have conversations with them internally with me and my direct report at the time. And I would not keep HR in the loop. That was my mistake. I should have did that. And so what happened in one particular person's situation is that the person came in, they did something really ridiculous. It was completely, I'm trying to think of what did they do? They were not following proper infection control procedures. Now, normally that person would have to go anyways, but I'd had a conversation with them multiple times, and they still were not doing it. And it just got to the point where I said, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm done. Like, I've told you this how many times, you're not doing it. And so I'd had conversations with the person multiple times, but I did not let human resources know about it. And this particular time, the person was doing something very egregious. And I said, you know what? We're going to let you go home today and let it go, and fire the person. And then what I did, all of you 204, is I would call HR and say, hey, how y'all doing today? By the way, I had to terminate Susie, and I let her go today. And they would say, wait, what? You terminated Susie? Dr. Jacinta, you just can't, Dr. Watkins, you just can't let us, that's fine. And we understand what you said. We get it, but you got to let us know what happens in these situations. Those scenarios happen very close to each other because it was two people. And so that's when I learned, oh, I probably need to make sure I communicate with HR. And they didn't have a problem with it. There was no issues with it necessarily because they trusted me that if someone had to go, they had to go. But it's just the communication that needs to come into play, because on their end, you have to keep in mind when they have somebody that they're terminating or doing other things, they have to determine how is this going to work, what's going to happen with employment. So they have the role on HR side that they have to deal with. So I learned that was my mistake. And so from that point forward, Olive Juice 2024, what I did, because I listened to them and I respect them, and still I do to this day, I decided, okay, what is it that I can do to make this a very structured process to help these individuals go to where they need to be in these roles? And how can I say to HR, this person's not working out? So what I decided to do, and let me say hello to a couple of people. We have Solan, and last name is, I know I'm gonna say it right, but they say, hi, just call me Boosie. Okay, hello, Boosie. Welcome. All right, so what I did was I came up with a assessment. So I came up with certain tasks, training aspect that this person, this new hire needs to do at least this task 10 times or 5 times or 12 times or 20 times, depending on what it was. They have to do this task X amount of times to be proficient in this particular role. I shared that with human resources. I gave them my SOP or standard operating procedure for it and said, this is my assessment. Therefore, when I have individuals that come in and they say that we are at a point where they're not doing what they need to do specifically, and I've had them go through this proficiency and they're still not getting it, then HR understood, oh, by the way, Dr. Jacinta or Dr. Watkins at the time was let me know that she's been working with them and it's not working. And so when I call them and say, hey, this person's not working out, I need to terminate them, they would say, go right ahead and do it. So that's what I did. I mean, I did most of my terminations on my own as a C-suite and as a director. I didn't necessarily have to have HR involved with me on my terminations because I just was, I don't want to say I was good at them, but I was able to handle them. Sometimes if you, depending on your role, you may not feel like you're able to handle it and you need HR support, but I'm used to having real hard conversations and that wasn't a challenge for me. So that's the mistakes that I made, that I learned that no, I need to keep HR in the loop. And it's not that HR was mad at me. They were just like, just please let us know when you're about to fire somebody. Just please let us know when that time is coming, just so we can prepare and at least have a conversation, because they want to say, well, have you tried this? And have you tried that? And I would say, yes, I have tried this, or no, I have not tried that. I will give this a try based on your suggestion. And if we do not have this person turn around, then we know what the next option is. So those are the mistakes that I made specifically, and why I'm a bit more strict or have more of a formal process when it comes to training individuals for that reason. And always keep HR in the loop. The person in HR that is the most unbiased should be your VP of HR, but you're right, sometimes people, they become a bit chatty in the HR group sometimes. All right, so we have Sage Sarabia 5053. Hello. I-10 Abdel Aziz, hello, please give me a shout out. All right, I just did. Hope you're doing well today. MK Dollar 6 Champ VAR, your beauty is unremarkable. All right, well, sorry you feel that way, but we're going to keep going. Olive Juice 2024 says, you were sent to me by God. Oh, well, thank you, friend. I swear, standard operating procedure is, and this is my assessment. Thank you. Absolutely. Well, I'll help you any way that I can, Olive Juice. I appreciate your insights, and I still have other questions you've sent in a message, so I'm still going to be taking care of that today. Tristan 270, hello. And Apex Noob General 6877 says, something for you. You are excellent at speech and talk, confident, intellectual, and such a beautiful smile. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And complexion. Lots of love. From my side, I stumbled into your live. Well, I'm glad you stumbled into the live, friend. I know YouTube has definitely been sending out my lives a lot more. For those of you who do not know, I'm on YouTube's live streamer research panel. They invited me to that earlier this year because I live stream so much. And a lot of it has to do with you being here and stopping by and saying hello and engaging. It's very helpful, and we're helping to shape the platform in terms of how specifically they are being able to live stream. And so I give them insights on different things, and we'll see how things go. Aiden W2Z says, love your tree. Thank you. Olive Juice 2024 says, 1000% at Apex. Well, thank you. I appreciate you all so much. And I'm here to help you any way that I can. Let me know what struggles you have about boundaries, setting boundaries. We'll go over the 5 boundaries you might want to think about in just a few, and then we'll go into some more questions. I have a question that was asked offline. I have another question from Olive Juice 2024 that I'm going to go over also. So I'm going to be here for a while today. And if you can't stay the whole time, don't worry about it. Just let me know if you have a question. I'll take a screenshot of when I start talking about it, and I'll put it in my communities tab so you can take a look at it and fast forward when you are ready to watch the video. Jake Lotto says, beautiful mama. Hello, Jake. Dave Butcher C4Y says, hi, hello. We have Gearweir GVAVA 5753. Hello. by Holy King 6951. Hello, what's the topic? We are talking about setting boundaries as leaders in 2026, my Holy King. So really glad you stopped by. There's a couple boundaries that I want you all to think about as you're transitioning as leaders, whether you're a woman in leadership or man in leadership into 2026, the 5 boundaries. And let me know if you're struggling with any of these boundaries. So let's talk about it. The boundaries, I would say, and this is not all encompassing boundaries in the entire world, okay? I'm not, I don't have all the information in the world. But over the past 20 years, these are the boundaries I see people struggle with as leaders. The time boundary, the money boundary, the energy boundary, the personal boundary, and the professional boundary. So if there's any of these 5 boundaries, you feel like, I'm struggling with this a little bit, let's talk about it. Talk about it in the comments below. I'm here to answer any questions you may have about this. All right, we have Ball Striker Bandito 8978. HR is no friend to employees, and neither are you. People in perceived power tend to corrupted by that perceived power. They begin to think they are superior to regular folk. Well, first I'll say Ball Striker Bandito 8978. I am sorry to hear that you've had bad experiences in the past, and whether you feel like I'm a friend to people or not, that's your personal opinion, because ultimately I don't know you and you don't know me. But I will say that sometimes people they've had bad experiences with HR, and I will candidly tell you that. Sometimes they have had good experiences with HR. It just depends. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in HR is bad, everyone in HR is good. You have to be discerning. It's the same thing with people anywhere in the world. You have good people, you have bad people, regardless of what their roles are, or etc. You just have to keep that in mind. So maybe if you've had bad experiences with HR, I'm sorry to hear that. I haven't been in HR directly, but I dealt with them quite a bit in a role as a senior leader. But that doesn't mean everybody in HR is bad. I will say this: if you are a leader, you have to have some type of relationship with HR depending on your role. And so many of the people that are watching my channel are in elevated leader roles, just like Olive Juice 2024 and Pratik Galatkar 1011, because they're doing higher level leadership type of roles. And forensic accountant, there's a couple people that stand out on my channel because they are leaders, they're higher level leaders. And you have to have that relationship with human resources if you're going to be the person that is hiring and firing people. That may not be your category right now, and that's okay. This channel is really geared to help you be able to communicate at a higher level than your peers. And if it's something that you feel like people are corrupted and they become corrupt when they get power, that's not necessarily the case. Now, are there a lot of instances out there where people do that? Yes, there are. There just genuinely are. People are like that, but not everybody. I would just encourage you to maybe be a bit more positive, that all people are not, bad, and all HR is not bad. Are there bad people out there? Yes. Are there bad people in HR out there? Yes. Are there good people in HR out there? Yes. Are there bad people? Are there good people everywhere? Yes. So just kind of keep that in mind. My Holy King says, I like your tree. It's different. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Apex Noob General 6877 says, thanks for helping the unknown viewers towards improvement. I'll let the others have time to ask. Enjoy your time. Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here and hope that you come back. Hope you subscribe. I'll be happy to help you any way that I can. Giawir GVAVA 573 says your tree is so cute. Well, thank you. Jason Patrick NG6UL says hi. And Bow Striker Bandito 8978. I haven't. Let's see. Carmen Watson Q3 Sunflower. Hi, I am new here. Well, hello, Carmen. Welcome. Hope you're doing well today. We're talking about setting boundaries. So if you have any questions specifically as it relates to setting boundaries as a leader, then let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Bow Striker Bandito 8978 says power corrupts, period. Not necessarily. If you've been in that role, then I'm not quite sure, but I would disagree with you on that, friend. Okay, so Apex Noob General 6877 says, I want to steal that tree. I'll put this tree together. Actually, I have the tree on... The tree, I purchased it from Amazon. Everything is from Amazon. Of course, everything is from Amazon nowadays. But everything I have is from Amazon. The star is from Amazon. The tree is from Amazon. The ornament's from Amazon. The star actually projects onto the wall, the ceiling, because I have kids and they like those kind of cool things. Olive Juice 2024 says, and understanding what leadership has to analyze constantly is helpful for non-exempt employees can learn from your leadership advice. Exactly, because sometimes they don't know what's going on the back end. You just have no idea. And so I appreciate that, Olive Juice, so much, and high five for that, friend. I thank you so much for that insight, because that's very helpful. Bow Striker Bandito 8978, who's HR, the HR department? I'm not sure what you're referring to, but HR is your human resources department. I know you know what that is because we were just talking about it. But it just depends. I mean, you'll have people in HR that are trained in HR. It really just depends. Apex Noob General 6877 says, I'm here in silence. Well, I appreciate you still being here. Jason Patrick NG6UL says hi. And Nawal Naber says, stop the HR, sir. Okay. And please read. All right. So, okay. I am going to go ahead and continue moving on. So let's talk about Pratik Galatkar mentioned earlier is it mentioned about how can you have these professional relationships with people and set those boundaries without ruining the relationship. So I want to talk about that just a little bit. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Bow Striker Bandito says 8978. I guess HR is exempt from scrutiny. Well, okay. So I would say that is it's a good point that you bring up. And I'll say this, and this is the reason why. Because I have seen that happen. And so I understand your perspective of like kind of thinking HR it can be challenging sometimes. But it just depends on your role and your position. Because sometimes I think there is a perception that HR can be exempt from scrutiny. There is. However, if you know who the bosses are, I don't believe you were live when we were talking about this earlier. If you know who the leaders are, the bosses are, the individuals who are actually the people that are making the decisions, if something comes up and you're a bit concerned as it relates to HR, then those are the people that you want to have conversations with. And I understand what you're saying. And that's why, I know you're just trying to explain what you've seen. But sometimes people do have that perception that HR is exempt from scrutiny. But that's not always the case. It just depends on who you need to communicate to show that. So if there's something that's happening on the HR side and you're not comfortable with it, there's typically somebody above HR, more than likely. And that's who you would have to have a conversation with, if that makes sense. Now, to answer Pratik Galatkar's question about how can you set boundaries and be able to not ruin relationships, the key thing that I would say, Pratik Galatkar 1011, is that you have to take some time and think about what does this boundary mean to you? And determining what's really important to you with this boundary. So for instance, in your case, I know time is a boundary for you. Time is a big boundary for you. And you want to make sure you have the time and the energy to do what it is that you need to do. You don't have to ruin professional relationships, but you do have to be able to focus on yourself too. And I talk about this, I've mentioned about the airplane analogy. I know you've heard it specifically, but for those of you who have not heard it, when you go into a plane and after you're all seated and etc., the pilot typically would tell you if the plane is going down, there's an issue with the plane, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you start putting it on to everybody else. The same analogy will work well with you as a leader. And if you're trying to be able to have that conversation and be able to do this with someone and speak to them and say, these are the boundaries I have, you have to understand that this is important to you. You have to take care of this for yourself. And sometimes you can have that candid conversation with someone depending on what your boundary is and what you're trying to set. So for instance, if you are working in your role, I know you're pretty busy with your work and you need to leave at a certain time, then you need to leave at a certain time. And you're able to leave and say, I have a couple things I need to take care of. I have to go at a certain time. And you don't necessarily have to ruin the relationship. People may sometimes look at you weird and say, Pratik Galatkar 1011 is acting a little bit differently. Why is he acting so differently? What's going on? And that may be something that we actually, and I'm going to screenshot that because I'm not sure if Pratik's still on here or not. So that may be something that you want to think about as you're having these conversations. It's all about your tone of voice when you're communicating with other people as you are setting these boundaries, particularly like our 1011. If you set the boundary in a way to where you're very aggressive in the conversation and etc., then people will kind of will feel like, oh, like they'll feel a little bit off guard when you have that conversation. Now, if you have a more polite, like this is, I'm working on a couple of things where I have a few things family-wise I have to take care of. You don't have to go into detail, but as long as you mention and let them know that this is how I need to have my boundaries set, hopefully that should not ruin the relationship. They will think of you differently, yes, because you may be setting your boundaries in a way that they're not used to, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to ruin the relationship. I've done that, and I will tell you there's stages of it. Initially, when you set your boundaries, people initially will test you, just like we were talking about with Olive Juice 2024. When you set your boundaries initially, people will keep testing you because they think, oh, well, she's not really serious, or no, they're not really serious, and they'll try to test you. And then the next thing they'll do is they try to test you again. But as long as you continue to be consistent, people will say, okay, this is something that this individual is trying to do. I know you have this change. And sometimes you just have to remind them, I have to leave at this time. I have to do this. I have to do that. And then they'll say, oh, okay. And then they'll let you go ahead and do it. Or sometimes they may just completely be rude and not even pay attention to you and still do it. You have to just continue to tell them, this is my boundary, this is my boundary, this is my boundary, and then they start to get it. If it's something that's related to your family or things you're taking care of, people tend to respect that. If you're saying, hey, I just want to go hang out and go play games or something, and people are going to say, well, what? That doesn't make sense. But it just depends on what you say as your boundary. What is it that you're working on? If you're working on your time, just say, I have a few things I'm working on. I need to leave at a certain time. But you don't have to ruin the relationship. As long as you say it in a very polite way that you still are getting things taken care of, but there's some things that you have to do, that helps to build a relationship. And a lot of it comes down to just communication. Communicating in a way that you would want to be spoken to. Think about if someone was telling you about a boundary they needed to have with you specifically, then you can say, okay, this is the boundary that I would want someone, this is how I would want someone to speak to me, so therefore let me speak to them in that way. And that helps to build a relationship. Sometimes we worry about it, and I mentioned at the very beginning of the live, for those of you who did not watch it, was the reasons why people become avoid boundaries. We know boundaries, as Pratik Galatkar 1011 said, we know boundaries are healthy. Why do people avoid them? People avoid those boundaries because of, number one, they're in a setting where they don't know what they need in terms of the boundary. And number two, they're just afraid to have that hard conversation. So be that person that's not afraid and know that this boundary is really important for you in terms of what you're trying to do. So I hope that answers your question. And then we'll go into some other questions in just a second if you have any other ones. All right, we have Bow Striker, Bandito 8978. So going over HR's head, that's sure to end badly. Well, look, I mean, if you feel like HR is exempt from scrutiny, they're not. And I'm sharing this with you as a senior leader. If you have concerns about something going on with HR, that's where you have to go. Will it end badly? Not necessarily. You would be surprised. Sometimes it does not end badly at all. But I'm just telling you this from my experience of doing this for 20 years. I've been in situations where people had concerns about HR, and that's exactly what happened. And the people that had concerns about HR, believe it or not, some of the concerns they had were actually very valid, and those people, it did not end badly for them. David Shorts 2P9E says, hi, hello. Apex Noob General 6877 says, I haven't done any job yet. What is the must-have skill to grow in any sector? Okay, well, great. I appreciate that. So Apex Noob General 6877, if you haven't done any jobs yet, the skill, there's a lot. It depends. I would say there's a couple skills I would mention for any sector. Now, if you have a specific sector, I'll give you whatever insights I can that I feel like I can on it. But I would say, generally speaking, sorry, I hit my foot again. Generally speaking, what I would say in terms of good skills to have is being able to communicate. And that's why hopefully you subscribe to my channel. Really being able to communicate is a very, very, very good skill to have. But there comes a certain level of communication that is a bit more advanced than other people. And that's what I want you all to learn here on my channel. And so if you can learn communication skills, it's very important. Let me give you perspective on this. There is a video that I watched on YouTube, and it was from, I think it was like a video about Jordan Belfort, and he had something that had, it was Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. They were at a college meeting talking to students, and they asked Warren Buffett, what are some skills that you need to have to be successful? And one of the skills that he said you need to have is communication. And that's one of the reasons why I would say communication is a skill that you're going to need in any job. You're going to need to be able to, or should be able to communicate in a way to where people understand what you're saying. You're being very concise with what you're saying. And when things happen and situations become more pressured, you know exactly what it is specifically that you want to say. So communication is one. Empathy is another skill I say, and I know people may say, why empathy? But if you're working in any role, any position, there has to be a point in your life, in your journey, where you understand where people are coming from. And this is the reason why, Bal Striker Bandito 8978, I disagree with you when you say that people, when they get into power, they become corrupt. That may be what you see, but that's not always the case. And so for me specifically, empathy is a skill that I think everybody needs to master, because we are all humans at the end of the day. And there's situations that I've been through that maybe you have not been through, or there may be situations that I've been through that you have been through. And as a leader in any role or any position or any job you have, having that sense of empathy will make you be that person that stands out from everybody else. You do not want to be the person that appears that they are out for their own self-interest and they could care less what happens to anybody else, and they're just about themselves. When you show that you are empathetic and you understand in your job, like for instance, if you're working in, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good field where empathy is important. Let's say you're working in cars. Many of you know I like cars. So let's say if you're working in cars, someone's buying a car and maybe they don't have everything they need for the vehicle. If you have empathy and know that, this person's just trying to maybe get their life started and get things in line for them, then you understand where they are and you try to do as much as you can to help them go to that position to help them so that they can actually get a car. And that's just an example. I think being empathetic is very important as a skill that you need as a job. Having the ability to be organized is a very important skill to have in any job. Organization helps you to think clearly. And oftentimes what happens in different roles, and this happens to leaders too, is that when you're in a situation where you are thinking about a task that you're trying to do or trying to accomplish, if you have everything just like everywhere, all over the place, then how can you be organized in your thought process to figure out this is exactly what I need to do and this is what I need to accomplish? So organization is key. So I've mentioned a couple skills so far: communication, empathy, organization is very important. Integrity is important also. Just treating people the way you want to be treated and be honest about it. If something is not going to work out, then you don't want to overpromise something that's not going to happen. Therefore, if you know that you have this outcome, this may happen, this may not, just be honest with the person. Say, hey, this is a situation, this is what's going to happen. I'll give you an example of this right now that's actually happening right now. Today, I'm getting my vehicle wrapped. As many of you know, I talked about this on my live channel. If you follow me on Instagram, I sent a picture over to my truck that's being wrapped today with my business logo and etc. I received a call while I was at the shop, while I was waiting for someone to pick me up, and the designer called me, and the designer said, hey, by the way, I noticed something on the back of your car. Now, keep in mind, they have pictures of my car. We've done design. We've been spending a lot on the design and etc. And the designer called me, and the designer just informed me that on the back of my truck, there's a sport icon that's there on the back of it. He is going to have to rip that off because that was not in our design, and there's no way they can lay the wrap on top of the sport icon. And he said, I just have to let you know that. I have to let you know that this is going to be an issue. Are you okay with this? This is not something I expected. I did not expect to have It's a sport tab ripped off the back of my truck because they have to wrap it. Now the truck has not even been wrapped yet. Nothing had happened, but they took pictures of it before, and that's what happened. So I appreciate them for being honest with me and telling me that, oh, by the way, this is where we are, this is what's going on, and are you okay with it or not? That's all you have to do. Just present the information. Either it worked for you or it doesn't. Just being a person that has some integrity is really important too. Those are just a couple skills that I would mention just for any job that you need to have. There's tons more, but that's something to get you started with. If there's a skill specifically Apex Noob General that you want to learn more about, let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Apex Noob General 6877 says, hi, David Shorts. And we have Pagal Punjabi 5434. Says something about a Punjabi song. And we have Bunny Matthews 1993. Hi, good morning. Hello, Bunny. How are you doing today? How are you? Happy Christmas. Praise the Lord. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. All right, let's keep going. Apex Noob General 6877 says, oh no, the spams. Yes, so as the audience grows, I say this on my channel, so do the trolls. And I'm not saying Punjab is a troll. I'm not saying that at all. But sometimes when people do that, it does come across as a spam. Apex Noob General 6877 says, thanks a lot. It will help me a lot. Communication, empathy, organization, personal integrity. Yes, that is very, 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 very important. So keep those in mind. And on the channel specifically, I really talk about those very advanced level communication skills. So for instance, Apex Noob General 6877, I talk about how to maintain content, how to communicate confidently under pressure, how to be able to control your emotions under pressure, how to modify your tone of voice, and etc. So those are a couple things that I talk about here, amongst a lot of other things: salary negotiation, interview preparation, resumes. I really focus on leadership. I will say that for the audience, in terms of who I work with directly in my executive coaching one-on-one services, I focus with women in leadership to help them communicate at a higher level, a confident level. But on YouTube and LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, I have people that are women in leadership, men in leadership, and I'm here really to help as many leaders as I can, because I know that we're just not taught how to communicate under pressure. And some of these situations and scenarios that you all have brought up are under pressure, and you're under pressure. And so that's why I want to be able to provide you with any insight I can. Learn from my 20 years of experience as a C-suite executive, a manager, executive coach, and a public speaker to really go to that next level. I've interacted with various congressional leaders at the national level and the state level here in Florida. And I understand what you have to do to really elevate and go to that next level of leadership. And the fact that you all are watching the live and clicked on the live is something. To me, I'm very specific in terms of what the live topics are. So I know you already are amazing as a leader or someone that's trying to go into the leadership world. This is exactly what I'm here to do, is to help you communicate at a higher level than your peers. And this is the best channel on YouTube to do it. Not because it's mine, because there's not a lot of channels that talk about real strategies and real situations that actually happen as it relates to being able to communicate at a higher level than your peers. So Miss B. Simmons, hello, hello. Says your tree is shaking. Yes, I'm in the sunshine state of Florida, so I have the air on. So the air is blowing, and that's why you see the tree, the ornament shaking. And we have Nah Stop It says, you leave me out. That was genuine. Not sure what you're referring to. Miss B. Simmons says, do you have a cat? No, I do not. Hero of Celine says, hello, just perusing YouTube. What is the conversation today? Hello, Hero. Well, we are talking about setting boundaries as leaders in 2026. So we've talked about a lot of great boundaries so far. This is actually a Q&A. This is a special live for me because I typically only go live Tuesday through Friday in the morning, in the evening. Today is Monday. And so this is a special live that I want to help my audience with, because this week I'm not going to be live as much just because it's Christmas here, and I won't be live as often as normal. But if you have any questions as it relates to just setting yourself up and really being successful as it relates to transitioning into 2026, there's some boundaries you want to try to set, Hero. And so a couple boundaries I mentioned earlier. There's 5 categories I mentioned. The boundaries would be time boundary, your money boundary, your energy boundary, your personal boundary, and your professional boundary. We've talked a bit about those today, and this is a live Q&A where people are asking me questions here live. I have questions that people have asked me offline. So if you have something that maybe there's a boundary or one of those categories you feel like you're struggling with, it might be preventing you from making and accomplishing the goals that you're trying to accomplish next year, then let's talk about it. Let me know in the comments below and we'll come up with something for you today. So we have ASDF76LM2CD. Hello, I don't know what you're referring to as pink. Sashin says, hello, Sashin, how are you? It says you look like Ronaldo. I do not look like Ronaldo. How can I look like that person when I'm not of that gender? Hero of Celine says, wow, that's an incredible resume. Well, thank you. I appreciate you for stopping by. All right, Hero of Celine says, how do you overcome adversarial predisposition when someone is sitting down at the table already against you? Oh, Hero, you're in the right place, friend. Let me say hello to the other person real quick, and I'm going to answer your question. That is actually a specialty of mine. All right, so Apex Noob General 6877 says, haha, it's so cute when you mention the whole name with numbers. Laugh out loud. You can call me Apex. Okay, I will call you Apex, friend. I named it over Apex Legends. It was a video game I used to play. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. And we have Mira Moo. Okay, well, hope you're doing well, and we're going to keep moving. Alrighty, so let's see. Let's go to Hero of Celine because they have a really great comment, really great statement, and it's a really good question. I'm going to read it again. How do you overcome adversarial predisposition when someone is sitting down at the table already against you? Well, there's many ways you can do this. And so if you have been in those situations, first of all, for those of you watching, have you ever been in a situation like that where you've been in a conversation with someone and you already know this person doesn't like you and you're sitting in the room and they don't like you? Have you? I have. Both hands up. I've actually had that happen before. So let me know in the comments below if that's actually ever happened to you. So these are a couple things that you will want to do, Hero of Celine, when you have that situation where you know someone does not like you. The first strategy I would say, and that I've actually used myself, is, and I know this is going to maybe not sound like you would say, oh, this is the first thing I need to do. Have your numbers together. And I know that may sound like, well, what does that have to do with having this? I'm going to go into the strategy in terms of how you want to handle this. So specifically, you want to have your numbers together. Typically, when you have somebody that is already predisposed to saying they don't like you, they are trying to get you in any type of way they can. Specifically, especially if you're in a group of people, you absolutely do not want to appear as if the person who is going to be called out and is not going to be able to respond. So have some numbers together, have some statistics together, know your field, your industry, your project like no one else. Because if you have somebody that is against you, so to speak, they're going to want to try to find something in your conversation, anything you say, to showcase that you are not the ideal person for this role, or you don't know what you're talking about, etc. This happens all of the time. So knowing your numbers, getting some statistics ready, being prepared for the conversation is number one. And that may not sound like the very first strategy, but that really is what I have done. I make sure that I know what I need to know. The second is you have to go into the actual techniques. Now, I'll highlight them briefly. I have several videos on my live tab, Hero, that talk specifically about eye contact, facial expression, etc. But when you have someone that is already adversarial, it just depends on how adversarial this person is. Is it in a working relationship where you can still, maybe it's a situation where you can say hello, smile, and be polite, but you know in your mind this person has got it out for you? Or is it one of those situations where this person just completely looks at you with disgust? I don't know what type it is, but I'll tell you what to do for either one. If it's someone where it's polite, but you know this person is against you, just still be polite, say hello. But when it comes to you communicating with them, you have to have a straight face with them, meaning you have to be very much in tune of your facial expressions in those specific situations. For example, if I'm speaking to someone specifically and I know they have it out for me and they're polite, I will talk to them politely, but in any opportunity I have to make sure I showcase what I know what I'm doing and that what they're saying may not necessarily be entirely correct, then I do it. So I make sure I maintain eye contact. And I talk about this briefly in many of my videos. If you look at any video on my live tab that talks about the cowboy analogy, that's what I use to help my clients maintain eye contact. So for instance, I talk about cowboys, and you have to just have your eyes focus on that person. Do not be the person to look away first. Eye contact is very important. The next thing is going to be your facial expressions. You have to control your facial expressions at a very high level. And this is what I do with my women in leadership clients that I work with. But you have to control your facial expressions at a very high level, because you do not want this person to think that whatever it is that they're saying is bothering you. You don't want them to think that. And the only way you can do that is by holding a very stoic look on your face. Eye contact, facial expression should be either straight, or you should practice how you smile. I talk about this in my email list. But know what your face is doing. Try to control your eyebrows too, because a lot of times when you're in those situations and someone's against you, they're going to say something to make you upset, and you want to control your eyebrows, because your facial expressions are something that you want to showcase to not only the person you're talking to, but if you're in a group, you want everybody to know, I'm okay over here. This person is against me, and you can see in my face that I am in control. And that's what I would do. If you know this person is just has disgust for you, then I obviously would not say, I wouldn't be overly polite and say, hi, how are you? Good afternoon, good morning, whatever. I wouldn't do that. I would just speak to them when I need to, or if I have a question, I ask them a question, and my tone of voice would be totally different. So for instance, if I'm speaking to someone that's friendly, I would probably have a bit more of an elevated voice. Hello, how you doing? I know you're trying to get after me, but I still would be very direct. If you have someone that is looking at you with disgust, then I would absolutely have a lower tone of voice, not a whisper, but just more depth to it, to say, I have a question about this topic. Can you explain to me a little bit more about this? That's how I would do it. If I know somebody does not like me, because ultimately the person and I, we probably have to work together to some extent, but I don't have to let them know that I think I'm a fan of them, and they don't have to let me know they think they're a fan of me. But ultimately we still have to work together, but I still would control your facial expressions, your tone of voice. Make sure you have your numbers together, and your body language is very, very important. So sitting upright, listening to what they're saying, being very, very observant to what they are doing and what they're saying. That's very, very important. I could talk about this hero all day long, because I've been in these situations where I've had to be this way. And if you want me to go into more detail on that, let me know. Could absolutely do a pre-recorded video for you. I know I'm doing one for olive juice here in a little bit, but this is something that is very, very important to keep in mind. So I hope that gives you something to work with, friend. Hope something to work with as relates to those situations where people are just giving you a hard time. All right, so Olive Juice 2024 says you can call me Olive or Olive Juice. Okay, absolutely. I will do that, friend. Apex Noob General 6877 says it happened to me in classrooms and family. Yes, so what did you do, Apex? What did you do in that case when it happened? Cohen Condor 89 Rock. Well, hello, Cohen. You're eating Takis. Glad you're here. Thank you for stopping by again. Apex Noob General 6877 says facial expressions are so hard to control for me. I know. And this is why you subscribe to the channel, Apex, because you need to be able to learn how to master your facial expressions. One of the things I tell my clients to do in a one-on-one setting, and I'll share with you too, is take some time and just record yourself talking about a topic specifically. Because if you record yourself, then you start to become more aware of how you're communicating. And this is from me being a public speaker. I've been a public speaker for over 20 years. I've been in Toastmasters. I became a distinguished Toastmaster in Toastmasters, and only 1% of their 358,000 members in the world accomplished that award. So I'm telling you this from experience in terms of what will actually really help you elevate how you communicate. And if you take some time to learn specifically, how do you communicate? Record yourself talking. You'll start to see those subtle gestures, as we call them, that you do when you talk about a topic. And I've said this on my channel before. Take some time to talk about record yourself talking about, and I actually do this with my clients. I actually tell my clients to do this. Record a topic that you're really interested about, something you're very passionate about, a topic that you could really care less about, and a topic that you absolutely don't like. And if you record yourself talking about those topics and look back at that video, you'll start to pick up some gestures and some things that you're saying and doing that may be taken away from your confidence or maybe showing your strengths. So take some time and do that. That helps you to understand your facial expressions. And if you want some more support on that, you're always welcome to reach out to me and contact me for a strategy session in the description below. But this is something that I work with my my women in leadership clients on a one-on-one basis. But of course, here on YouTube, I'm here to help you any way that I can. And this is a great way for you to start learning how to control your facial expressions by knowing what your face does at certain times. I know what my smiles are. I know when I need to show emotion, when I don't need to show emotion. It just depends. But I've only been able to do this because I have been training to do this for a long time. And so that's why I want to share this information with you so you all can get a head start of everybody else. That's the reason why you'll stand out from every other leader, because you're subscribed to the channel. Thank you for the smiley faces, friends. Eric Halliday S3N says, I love your hair. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Abdullah Shakil 4279. Appreciate the 100s. Can you say happy birthday to my little brother? His full name is Jabe Horn. Well, happy birthday, Jabe. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hero of Celine says, what would you say are the most important traits to carry into a new environment where you're making first impressions? What qualities are important to make those first few hours? Oh, Hero of Celine, yes, we were talking about some great topics that I could talk about all day. I'm going to give you some insight on that in just a second. Let me make sure I say hello to everybody, and we're going to come right back to you, Hero. Funny Vids Illustrated. How would you address someone in an authoritarian position that wants to annex your sovereign territory in Greenland? I would tell them don't do it. Eric Halliday S3N says, I love your nose. Okay, thank you. Michael Bawana, hello, hello. Olive Juice says, my eyebrows have their own personality. All of our eyebrows do, Olive Juice. That's why we have to control them. When someone says something to us, we have that is one of the areas that will just completely give your emotions away, and what you're thinking in your head away is your eyebrows. So yes, you have to control that one. All right, Eric Halliday S3N says something that's really not appropriate. Why crack? Same. We're gonna keep moving. All right, James Grand 10 says, hey, just joined. Hey, well, hello, James Grand 100. Hope you're doing well. All right, let's go back to Hero of Celine. So it has two great questions. Let's break it up into two parts. What would you say are the most important traits to carry into a new environment where you're making first impressions? Okay, there's a couple. The most important traits that I want you to carry into a new job, and it includes the following. You have to be polite, number one. You want to be polite. You don't want to come across as the person that's just the not nice person that just started. Be polite, but not share too much about yourself. I would also be very focused on what you are saying. So being able to respond in a very concise way is important. And I would make your conversations more focused on the job than focused on like your personal life. And I've seen a lot of people make this mistake when they first meet somebody. They will go into a workplace settings and they'll say, okay, well, this is my first day. I want to live a great impression and I just want to talk to everybody and do this. Well, no, you don't want to necessarily do that, because when you're going into a new role, you still have to, you almost are setting boundaries initially and people don't even know you. This is how you develop your executive presence. You still want to be somebody that is very friendly, but you don't necessarily be the person that is the oversharer of information. So for instance, the mistakes I've seen people make is when they come into new jobs, they're just, hey, how you doing? Very high energy, which is great, you need to be, but they'll just start talking about their personal life. And they're trying to build rapport, but you don't have to build rapport like that. If you can go into your role and still be polite, still be very energetic in your specific role, but still not tell every single personal thing about your business, that makes you stand out. And if you are more focused on the job, it shows people that Hero is very serious about this new job that Hero is in. So you may, if somebody asks you a question specifically and they say, Hero, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Tell me a little bit about yourself. That is going to come up in your interviews and on your first impressions too. You could say, well, I'm really glad to be here in this position. I've been in this type of industry for X amount of years, and I have so many great ideas for this role that I want to do to help everybody move forward. And I'm just really looking forward to being here. You still were polite, you still were friendly, but did you tell them about your personal business and what you do on the weekends? No, they don't need to know that. But sometimes people feel like they need to know your personal business, which is something that Olive Juice mentioned that I'm going to talk about, that people need to know about their personal business and their workplace setting. They don't need to know all that. So that still makes a good impression. One came across as polite, one came across as very knowledgeable, and two, it just comes across as you're very focused at the job. Those are ways to make great impressions, because when people start interacting with you, they know that, oh, okay, the Hero is very focused on this role. Hero sounds like it'll be a really great fit, without even knowing anything about you personally. And that's how I would say to make a good impression: be polite, be energetic, but be very careful and strategic about what you say. Make it all focus on the job, all focus on the job. And that may not be what people think of in terms of making a good impression, but I don't want you to make a good impression. I want you to make a great impression that's going to set you up for success. Because what happens is people go into jobs and they start with that first impression, they tell too much of their business, and then what happens later? What happens, friends? Let me know if it's happened to you. It happened to me many years ago. People will start to just have conversations, and they'll start to become a little lax in terms of how they communicate with you. And then what happens? They start treating you differently. You get frustrated. They get frustrated, and it's just circle. And it's harder to establish your executive presence later than it is to establish it in the beginning. And if you can be consistent in the way you communicate, that will help people and help to have a really good impression for you. Now, in terms of your second question, you say, what qualities are important to make in those first few hours? Being polite, energetic, excited, but a controlled excited. Not like overly excited, like, oh man, I'm just so happy to be here. I'm just so happy to be here. No, it has to be very controlled, very excited. I talk about this a lot on my channel, Hero. You should absolutely subscribe to this channel because you're asking some really great questions. But I talk about this a lot on my channel. Controlling your facial expressions, as we were talking a moment ago. Being able to have a conversation with someone, listen to what they're saying, just being that person that seems like they are very much in control of themselves, not oversharing, not over complimentary of things, just being the person that is very focused on the job, that has boundaries, that is treating themselves with respect, and you're expecting respect from everybody else. Those are strategies and qualities I would say that are really important. As long as you're coming across as energetic and polite, it almost balances out your seriousness, not necessarily being very overly serious, but it balances your seriousness out to where people don't really notice it as much. If you still are polite and upbeat and very energetic, but if you come across as not energetic, not upbeat, and you're still being serious, then people say, oh, this is a bad person. Why'd you all hire the Hero? You don't want them to say that. But if you come across with a lot of energy and you're still balancing it by keeping eye contact, smiling, not smiling if it's not appropriate. One thing I want to share with you, Hero, and this is something I want you to maybe think about too. You do not have to nod your head in agreement with everything that people say. A lot of times people will do that often, and people will just nod their head. Don't do that. Be more controlled with your facial expressions. All of these things I'm mentioning will help you to really stand out and make that good first impression. I want you to have the best first impression, but have that first impression that sets you up as someone that has an executive presence that needs to be treated with respect. Not someone that is, oh, they're just happy to start this job, and then people start treating you differently later. So I hope that gives you something to think about there, Hero. All right, let me go back into the chat. Apex Noob General 6877 says, calling out for movement. Thanks a lot. Keep the good work up. Absolutely. I'm here to help you in a way that I can. Everton Watson 8708 says, hello, hello. Shara Princess Renan says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Shara. Hero of Celine says, you said develop executive presence. What is executive presence? As it seems like it's core to your lessons. I can guess by words, but perhaps it's more complex than I think you're probably saying than that. Okay, Hero of Celine, we're going to talk about that in just a second. Ruben Ware says, hello. Hello, Ruben. Ken Zirkle 8940 says, I'm a small content creator. Well, welcome, Ken. Hope you're doing well. If you have some questions about creating content and being on YouTube, let me know. I am a part of YouTube's live streamer research panel and be happy to give you some insights that I can to help you on your journey. I'm a small creator also, but have grown pretty quickly here. So if you have some questions specifically, let me know. I'll help you in the way that I can. It's not on topic for boundaries, but I can help you for sure. Okay, Hero Celine says, more complex than it seems initially. I cut my question off too early. Sorry. No problem, Hero. Okay, so executive presence is important, and in your role specifically, Hero, it's really important. What you're telling, just what you're mentioning to you, just like the conversation I had with Olive Juice, and then also with Pratik Galatkar, forensic accountant. I've had this conversation so many times, especially with the leaders on my channel that are in those higher level leadership roles. So specifically for executive presence, I'll tell you my very humble opinion about it and what I call executive presence. But I want to preface this by saying that executive presence can sometimes appear to be very, very complex. Why? Because a couple of reasons. One, there's a lot of information out there as it relates to executive presence. And there's a lot of videos here on YouTube. There's just a lot. Some people feel like executive presence is you'll get overly academic responses in terms of executive presence. I've seen it described as definitions about this long. I've seen it defined in a book specifically that talks about executive presence. It's they say it as, and I don't know if I remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's like 60% gravitas, 30% communication, and 10% appearance. And so sometimes it comes across as very academic. And what I found, and this is in my very humble opinion, of developing my own executive presence over the years before I even knew what it was, is that people sometimes will talk about executive presence in a way to where it's so academic that doesn't make sense because they don't know exactly what it is because they've never actually lived it. They're just talking about it from living through somebody else. And I've found that my definition of executive presence is your ability to inspire and influence other people as a leader. That's it. That is my very humble opinion of it in terms of what executive presence is. It is something that is important to my channel because I feel like a lot of people, or I know a lot of people, struggle with developing it. Some people say it's not real. It's like a mystical unicorn. And I would say most of the time when people feel like it's not real, those are individuals who have not learned to either develop it or master it, or maybe they struggled with it. I completely believe it's real. Just in those particular situations that you mentioned, I've talked about executive presence. So is it complex? There's a lot that goes into it, and I talk about this in a lot of my videos here on my channel, so feel free to take a look at some of those. But one of the things I'll share with you, Hero, that's really important for you to keep in mind is the reason why people struggle with their executive presence is because they are not consistent with it. Now, there's a lot that goes into it. How your physical appearance, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be like the smallest or the largest person in the room or necessarily, but just how do you present yourself? How do you speak, your tone of voice, your eye contact, your body language, your ability to think on your feet, how you're able to communicate in challenging or under pressure type of situations, and etc. All of that comes together to make your executive presence, and it's something you have to work on and develop, and it takes time to do so. But I help my clients do that specifically. But I want to say specifically that consistency is key. Consistency is really the most important situation that you can, I would say, try to work on as it relates to your executive presence, because you just have to be consistent. The moment, and this is what we're kind of referring to in some of your questions, the moment that you give off the vibe that you're not consistent, you let things easily frustrate you, you're not the person in control, is the moment that people start to feel like, oh my goodness, he's not consistent, she's not consistent. Oh, okay, well, we're just going to talk to that person in any type of way. And that's why it's really important. If you have some other questions about it, I definitely will talk more about it. I can talk about that literally all day long. All right, we have Redhen Hazari says, today is my friend's birthday. His name is Mike Hunt. Can you please give him a shout out? Happy birthday, Mike Hunt. Glad you're here today. Micah Sudis says hi and hello. Olive Juice says, our C-suite is filled with many doctors. Okay, I also wear at least a blazer. Our looks trigger people's biases. Use it to your advantage and look the role always. Yes, high five, Olive Juice. Absolutely correct. That alone will get you more respect. Yes, so really great point, Olive Juice, and I appreciate you so much for bringing that up, because wearing a blazer or looking, you don't necessarily have to always wear a blazer, but looking nice is something that is really important to executive presence. That's why when I read the book, and give me just 1 second. That's why I didn't read the book, but I saw the book on executive presence when it talks about the percentages and etc. And appearance is 10%. I was thinking to myself, how is that even possible? Does this person, have they ever had an executive presence? Because your appearance is a big part of it. How you perceive yourself is how people will perceive you. And if you position yourself in a situation where you come to a meeting and you look disheveled, your hair is all over the place, and you don't look neat, then how can you have an executive presence like that? Executives are the people that are making the big decisions. They're making the hard decisions and etc. And I'll say that this is just something you have to do. Now, I will tell you that a lot of doctors feel that way and they'll dress appropriately, but there's some doctors out there that will not. I believe it or not, I had an interview with a doctor, because I'm a doctor, and the doctor came to the interview looking like they just came from the beach, literally, like in jeans and a t-shirt. So is it intuitive to everybody because of their role? No, it's not. This is the reason why we talk about it on my channel, because executive presence is very important, and how you look is very, very important also in terms of your appearance. So Olive Juice, I appreciate you bringing that to our conversation today. And it's incredibly important because it helps you to gain more respect. The next step is being able to communicate that executiveness. Now, I've seen people do the opposite. Well, not the opposite. I've seen people come into the room looking very well put together and not knowing how to handle themselves under pressure. And so there has to be that balance. You have to balance both of them. You can't just look nice and then not know what to say. So you have to put them together, which is why we talk about it so much on the channel. Olive Juice says, I look homeless when working from home and have no meetings. I understand, because at home you're different, but when you're at meetings, you're dressing the part, which is what we just talked about. So that is something to consider, and I appreciate you so much for bringing that to our conversation. Okay, so there was a question I was starting with earlier, and then we'll go into Olive Juice's question, and I have another one outside of that. Now, the question I was going to start with earlier on the live is about how to detach from a job without being unprofessional. This is something that's important, especially as it relates to setting boundaries. The reason why this is important, because similar to Pratik Galatkar's question, in that you don't necessarily want to ruin a relationship because of the way you're communicating and etc. and you're trying to set boundaries. You don't want to ruin the relationship, but you have to set those boundaries nonetheless. But specifically, we're talking about detaching from a job. That was a question from someone on one of my accounts that platforms on. How do you do that? How do you detach yourself? Well, you have to really think about what's most important for you to do in your role. That is really important. So you have to understand that there's some things you need to do, and there's some things you probably don't have to do. Do you have to do this task today, or do you have to do this task by the end of the week, by the end of the month, by the end of the year? So thinking about how you structure your time and your energy is really, really, really very, very important in this type of setting. Now, keep in mind that the way you do this and how you communicate with other people as a leader will make a big difference when you are trying to detach yourself. So as long as you are still maintaining yourself, still being that same person that's communicating the same way, that's not changed or not becoming too short, you still will be able to detach yourself if you just focus on what is it that you absolutely have to do in your role specifically. So that's what I would recommend when you're setting boundaries. Just make sure you still are the same person, but you have to mentally detach yourself and say, what is it that I have to do? How much energy do I really need to put into this topic? Or can I just scale back just a little bit? So that's what I would say for that person that asked me a question. Now, Olive Juice had a scenario we were talking about earlier. And so I'm going to talk about that now. And I know Olive Juice is here, so I'll make sure I go through this. This definitely requires a bit more of a, I would say, deeper conversation for sure, because this is a big topic. So basically, what happens when you're in a situation where you're in a toxic job and you've decided in your mind that you're ready to transition to do something else? Maybe you're starting a side business, or you have a side type of hustle that you're working on. How do you do this? And how do you navigate those conversations with people when you are being asked to share more about yourself personally than what you need to? So I'm going to break this down into a couple of options here and strategies and etc. We'll talk about how do you respond to people first. So if you have a situation where you're in a toxic work environment and you have people that want you to share more about yourself than what you really feel like is appropriate, there's ways that you can do that. I would always focus on the job. And I've been in situations like that. I've been in workplaces where they're just, I would say they just want to know your business. I don't know any other way to say it. They just want to know your business. And so that's something that you definitely want to work on. Olive Juice said side hustle. Yes. So yes, Olive Juice, we're about to talk about your topic now since you're here. Okay. So when I've been in a situation where people want to know more about your personal business than what you really want to share, I am very, very, very selective in terms of what I actually say to other people. And I always put things focused on the job. Similar to what I mentioned earlier as it relates to having a conversation, making that very good first impression with someone that Hero of Celine mentioned earlier. I really would focus on the job. So if someone asked me a personal question, let's say, what do you like to do for fun or for fun? I would say, oh, I actually enjoy reading articles about this discipline, whatever discipline or role I'm in right now. Or if they ask you something silly like, what's your favorite color? Oh, my favorite color is blue. Say nothing else. I'd be just very short in your responses. If it's something that is a very simple yes or no, I would give just a really straight response, and I would a very abbreviated response, and I wouldn't go into more detail. If they're asking more questions like, oh, specifically, what do you need to know, and this and etc., you just don't have to go into it. You just can say enough to where you said it, you answered it, but you really didn't go into a lot of detail. That's the part that people can struggle with sometimes, and this is something that will make you very, I would say, very mysterious to other people. People will feel like they know you know everything about them, but they don't know anything about you. Well, I mean, in a professional setting, I prefer to be that way. There's plenty of people I work with that don't know a lot of information about me because I don't share it. And so specifically when I was in my portion of my career, in terms of when I was making that transition, while I was still working a 9-to-5 and I was working my business, there was a lot of that going on. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So Olive Juice says, I've worked there 1.5 years. They don't know my kids' names. Exactly. So if that's the case, then why are they asking personal questions of you? Do they really care? Probably not. They just want to know your business. And so when you know that and you acknowledge that, you just have to treat them accordingly. You don't have to go into a lot of detail with what they're asking for specifically. All right. So next thing on the chat says Deepa Siva 171 says, do you believe in Jesus? Yes, I do. So the next thing I would say in terms of the boundaries, and Olive Juice says, okay, that is really helpful. Thank you. Absolutely. So let's talk about the side hustle. Let's talk about side hustle in terms of your plan, in terms of moving forward. Okay, so I thought about what you mentioned. And as I mentioned, it definitely is a video. I'm going to do a separate pre-recorded video. But to give you something to think about, when you're in a toxic work environment, and I've been in those, and if you're watching live or you're watching the replay, let us know if you've been in a toxic work environment. Have you? I have been in a couple, and so this is the reason why it's important. Now, specifically, if you're trying to start your own business or side hustle, as some people call it, or maybe you're starting a business, or maybe you're not even starting a business, you're just trying to make some additional income, there's a couple things that you have to do that while you're working 9 to 5. And the very first step that I took, and I'm giving you what I did because when I was actually making these changes for myself specifically, I did exactly this. I had to understand, why am I doing this? Like, why do I want to start a business? Why do I want to generate more income outside of my job, and etc.? The reason I say that is because many people really do struggle with this. There are times in your journey, whether you're just trying to generate additional income or maybe you're actually starting to develop your business, where you'll get tired. Things will not work out. Money will not come. You will be frustrated. And your why has to be so deep and ingrained in you and be very meaningful to you, so that when you have those days, you know that it doesn't matter. I still want to move forward. Starting a business, starting a side hustle as a 9 to 5 or a W-2 is not easy. And there's plenty of people that will tell you, I just don't have time for that. Like, I don't have time for that. I just want to go home. I want to chill and watch some Netflix. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to do your side hustle, you are definitely at an elevated level than the rest of the people in the world, because everybody can't manage that life. They just say, oh, it's too hard. It's too hard. So your why has to be very, very meaningful to you. So for me specifically, my why was I wanted to spend more time with my kids, but I want to generate additional revenue outside of the role I was in. I had a situation happen specifically during this period when I started my business, where I was working for an organization, and there were some funds they were supposed to pay for us as a bonus, and they did not pay us our bonus even though we had worked for it. They eventually did make the payment, but initially it didn't happen. And I said, okay, this is probably not the right, there has to be more to life than this. Like, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm just constantly working for people, giving them my time when I know I could be doing probably a lot more by myself. So there's a couple things that I had to have in my mind in terms of what is my why. Like, why did I want to do this? My next step that I did when I determined kind of what my why was, I had to figure out, what are the skills that I need to make this happen? Now, at that time, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had no clue, really. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I did a bit of research, and I found a couple things that I could work on. There's a few things I was already developing. My public speaking skills, I've been doing that since 2019. But in terms of being an executive coach, that's something I wanted to start working on and developing, and etc. So I determined what skills I needed to make this side business I was working on develop. The next step I worked through, and this was actually the most important step, why our topic today is so incredibly important as it relates to boundaries, is specifically the boundaries that you are going to need to set in order to start your business. And the boundaries that I had to focus on the most in this situation were the time boundary, and the energy boundary, and the personal boundary. These three boundaries literally made or broke my career movement in terms of my business that I was developing at the time. So I want to say hello to Sabaroy H2O. Hello, hello. Hope you're doing well. And what did I do? So specifically for me, and this is something I'll use for you to think about also. Now we have your why. We know what skills you may need, or you know what skills you may need to develop your business or your side hustle. You have to figure out your time. And so what I did was I became very microscopic with my time, meaning that I broke down exactly what I needed to do every day. I reversed engineer my day, and I determined what time do I need to leave, what time, if I want to get up early in the morning, because at that particular time in my career, I was at a place where I was trying to figure out what exactly do I really want to do, and how can I make this happen. time was the issue that I had. And I don't know what specifically Olive Juice your issue was, but my time was the issue. I just felt like I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough time to start my business and do other things. And what I did was I reverse engineered my schedule. I knew I needed to get up early in the morning to work on my business. So at this particular phase of my life, and I'm not saying to do this, Olive Juice, by no means, but this is what I did. And I don't do it now. At the moment, I don't. But before, when I was in the middle of it, when I was working in that role specifically and doing 9 to 5, and I had a very demanding job, I literally was getting up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, consistently, every morning during the week, except on the weekends. I did not do that. So I would get up in the morning. I would either exercise or I would work on the business for a couple hours before I'd have to wake up, before I got my kids and got them ready for school, and then went to work 9 to 5 and then went home and then went to bed. So I knew that that was what was going to work for me. And it worked for a long time, believe it or not. So what did I have to do? I had to backtrack and say, okay, in order for me to go to bed, in order for me to get up at 2:30 in the morning, what time do I need to go to bed? How many hours of sleep do I need? And this is at the time where I had young children and they were just born. So, I mean, it was a lot. So I determined that I had to go to bed by 8:30 in order for me to get up during that time period for me to work a bit. Okay, so if I know that my hard stop is 8:30, 9 o'clock at the latest, I have to go to bed, then I have to reverse engineer my whole day. That means at 5 o'clock, I have to leave work. I have to leave work at 5 o'clock. And I can't stay late. I cannot stay late and just sit in and have conversations. So the next level I went to that after reverse engineering the schedule was I thought about specifically, okay, if I have to leave at 5 o'clock on the dot, what is going to prevent me from leaving at 5 o'clock? I found that meetings that went forever, that people started to ramble and talk about personal stuff that didn't make any sense, those are the type of meetings that would waste my time. And I became very, very strict with my time. If I started seeing that the meeting was going in a random direction and we have already covered the most important topics we needed to cover, I literally, Olive Juice, would tell them, excuse me, I have to go take care of a project. I have to go to a meeting, or I have to go do something. I hope you all have a great day. And I would get my stuff and leave, because I knew that this ramblingness that happens in meetings and talking and etc. is something that just it was taking up my time. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, if I sit here waiting late to listen to these individuals just ramble, and we're not talking about business, we're not talking about the organization, that's time that I'm going to have to spend to do more other projects that I'm working on. That's going to prevent me from leaving work at 5 o'clock. That's going to prevent me from going to bed at a certain time. And that's going to prevent me from getting up at the time I need to work on my business before I go to work. And I really had to get very microscopic with my time, and I reverse engineer it in that way to where that's exactly what I did. I would say also the energy boundary was something I worked on too. If it took too much of my energy to do a task, I would not do it. I would definitely just wait until I had the energy to do it in terms of what it was. And I would say I did what I needed to do to be successful in the role, but I didn't go above and beyond and do a million things, because I knew at that point in my life that I was trying to do something bigger, and I had to balance it out. I can't give 100%, I can't give 95% or 97% to this job and 3% to my business, because it's not going to work. There's a influencer I follow and actually like some of his content. His name is Tanner Chidester. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. But he has this short I was just looking at the other day, and he talked about how if you're working a 9 to 5 and you're trying to start your business, it's really very difficult for you to actually do this in this setting, because you're not able to really give your time, and you probably can do a lot more in your business if you are not working 9 to 5. But that's just something just to think about. But I do think there is some truth there. Can you build both? Sometimes you have to, because you have to have your income to support your family, but then also you have to build something else on the side. And so the way I did it was I just took some time to really determine what is the most important task I need to do in this job. I need to make sure that my team gets paid. and we're making enough money for the team to get paid. I'm working on revenue, I'm working on quality, and etc. But I have to be able to say, you know what, at this time I have to go because I have to do something else. Now, the other personal boundary, and I'm going to go to the chat, the other personal boundary that I worked on specifically was not sharing my business. Many people knew something was going on with me because I was very much, I've always been very direct and very efficient, but they could just tell it was like at a heightened level. I'm not going to go into this now, or do we have all the information we need? No, then let's not have a meeting about it. Let's have a meeting when we're all prepared, that type of situation. So they knew something was going on, but they just didn't know what. And so at that time I was recording YouTube videos. I had my business. I mean, my whole business was running and nobody at my job knew about it. And that's the way that I did it personally. And all the things I mentioned is exactly what I did specifically when I was making that transition. So it's a couple things you might want to think about as you're making that transition as well. Just those boundaries to set, your why, and figuring out timing wise how you want everything to work. Of course, as I mentioned, my timing is different. That's the time I got up in the morning at that time. I don't do that now. I don't get up that early now. I will at some point, but at the moment I'm not. But that's just what helped me to start making that transition a bit. Okay, let me go to the chat. Okay, Olive G says, I build processes via reverse engineering, so that's a great tip with time. Yes, I had to do that. I had to go very much in reverse to figure out, like, what if I do this, then this is going to happen. If I don't do this, this is going to happen. If I don't cut this meeting off at the time it needs to be cut off, then I can't finish the project that I need to be successful in my role. Then I can't leave here at 5 o'clock. Then I can't go to bed at this time. Then I can't record videos. And then I can't be able to get up in the morning to try to work my business. All of those things really come into play. And a lot of times people I would say in certain settings, they don't necessarily talk about this specifically. But this is what you have to do if you're trying to grow and develop your business. You are not the average person when you're doing this. You are an exceptional person, which I already know that you are, but you're doing something that other people can't do or other people really struggle to do. So how you manage things and how you set things up is going to be different. Now, I'll tell you, you're going to have people to look at you like you're crazy. They're going to say, well, why would you do that? Like, why would you just not work a job? Like, why did you just want to work a job? And I would encourage them to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've read that. That's one of my favorite financial books. But people are going to look at you like you've lost it. They're going to think, oh my gosh, what is Olive Juice talking about? Like, how in the world are you able to do that? But just keep in mind, just keep going. That's okay. There's a couple of us that are out there that have done the same thing. Sabra Roy, H2O says, will trading in stock market also help me in my business? Sabra, yes, I absolutely, friend. I would say get on that as quick as you can, because there comes a point in time, and you're welcome to share with me your business that you're doing right now. There comes a point in time in your business where I was just having this conversation this weekend. There comes a point in time in your business where you have to start gaining income from other places. There are many people out there that are in businesses and they work in their businesses, and if they have a bad day, the business doesn't make money. Well, you don't want to set yourself up like that. You want to set yourself up to where you're making money even if you have a bad day. And if you're starting to do more trading in the stock and etc., that's a great way to start that. I know for me personally, I'm working on dividends. That's something I'm actually setting up this year, and I want to be able to trade a bit also. And that's just for me personally what I'm working on. But it is important when you're developing your business to have income from coming from different places. Stock market, dividends, index funds, all of that is helpful. There's many other ways you can make different types of income online. There's a lot. If you all want to talk more about it, we can talk a little bit about it, but just let me know in the comments below. Okay, Olive Juice says, I started logging off at 5 p.m. and forced myself not to look at work. It took me a minute, but it's been 2 months now. Oh, congratulations. High five, Olive Juice. It's hard. It's hard, especially with the type of leadership role that you have. You have a higher level leadership role. And you and I both know at 5 o'clock, you still will get text messages. You still get text messages on other things. And people ask you questions about this, that, and etc. And this is just a part of the wonderful world of leadership. However, you do have to pause things a bit and be able to turn it off. And sometimes it's hard. What I used to do too, and I'm so glad and so proud of you for doing that, I would just wait until to respond in the morning. I would maybe glance at it and say, okay, I saw it, but I wouldn't respond until the morning, because you do have to mentally turn off the switch from the job you're at, because sometimes when your mind is so preoccupied in your current role, you can't focus on your business. Now, many people say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should be 100% focused on your job you're at right now. That's paying your bills. How would you do that? No, ultimately, I'm not trying to live the life that everybody else has, and neither are you, Olive Juice. So there's things that we do differently. We have to turn things off. And I know this is a challenge for people. People really struggle with this, and they say, no, that's not right. You shouldn't tell people that. I had somebody comment on one of my videos on how to say no at work a long time ago and saying, you shouldn't be teaching people things like this. That's not right. Like, you're trying to get people in trouble. Well, ultimately, that's not necessarily the case. If you're trying to build something bigger than your job or your profession, then you're going to act differently than everybody else. And that's just something that happens. And the fact that you've been able to do this for 2 months, Olive Juice, is amazing. That's fantastic. And I'm so glad you're able to do that. All right, Olive Juice says this meeting could have been an email. Yes, that happens. And so when you notice those situations that come up when the meetings can be emails, this is where I have done this. Thank you for the heart emojis. I have mentioned that specifically. Can we talk about this via email? Or the minute I find out that people are not prepared for the meeting and they just come in, well, what are we meeting about? I don't have this together. I don't have that together. I literally would say, I appreciate everybody for coming today. It seems like there's some data or some information that we do not have together just yet. Let's schedule this meeting for a time when we have everything together. When do you think you'll have your part together? When do you think you'll have your part together? And I would coordinate it to where we have a time set for the next meeting. But ultimately for me, I'm leaving. I have other things to do. I have other things to take care of. Olive Juice 2024 says, I went above and beyond out the gates because the whole company was looking at me to build a new department they have zero experience in. I understand. I felt the same way, and that's exactly what happened to me too. All right, so it'll all be done soon, and why I'm only putting in what's needed. Exactly. And so the good thing about that case, in your situation, Olive Juice, is you have already built your, I would say, your credibility already. So you put in so much work at the beginning. I did the same thing too. I did the exact same thing you did, because literally our experiences are very, very similar. I was at a place where they had zero experience, same, brought them out, did everything. And as long as you are in a setting where you put out a lot of effort initially, then you can start to scale back, and people really don't even notice it. They just notice like, oh man, the department is doing really well, and etc. So that's a really smart move that you did, and it will help you as you're setting up your side hustle. Because let's say, for instance, if you came in and you just did not do what you needed to do initially, and things were not growing in your department, then people would say, oh, Olive Juice is not doing that well, or I see they're starting to cut out on meetings and etc. You wouldn't have that credit already built up. So building up your credit in your role is very, 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 very important. And I like that you did that. That's a very good insight for everybody to think about. All right, Olive Juice says, yes, my boss noticed my shift in a bit more directness. I felt I needed to share a little so she could help me not crash out. Absolutely. You have to do whatever is best for you to help you in that role. And yes, sometimes you have to be direct because you have something else you're doing. Now, would you tell your boss about your side hustle? Olive Juice, please don't do that. But in terms of what you try to be just more efficient, we got a lot of projects you're working on. Absolutely. So they know that, oh, okay, you're here trying to help. Because I'll tell you honestly, I have seen it, and this is even before I started my business. I have seen how employers, their whole attitude towards you changes when you are saying you are doing something different and doing your business or starting a side hustle. People really act differently. Now, some jobs are okay with it. Some jobs are not okay with it. And I would say majority of jobs probably have a problem with it. I have seen a situation happen to someone I was working with who and I talk about this on one of my videos, who shared with her manager, and this is a true story. She shared with her manager that she was starting a side business not related to the job she was in. She shared it with the manager. The manager, what she shouldn't have done, went and told everybody in the office at the time that, oh, did you know that this person is doing this side business on XYZ? And I think she was doing like cosmetology or something like that. I think it was like cosmetology, eyelashes or something. And every time this person was sitting down and on their phone, every time, they always said, oh, she's working on her side business at work. And she's not supposed to be doing that. Sometimes it's just not worth it. And sometimes what happens is people become so comfortable with their managers or their bosses, and you have to have some rapport there. But sometimes people become so comfortable with their managers or their bosses that they feel like they need to share some of their personal life. Well, there's a balance. You can share some of your personal life, but some of it you do not need to share. And if you're starting your business on the side, that's something that I didn't do. I didn't share. And I've just seen people become placed in very, very complicated situations because they do that. It's literally almost as if the company tries to find ways to figure out that you're working on your business. Now, I will tell you this. If the organization I was working for at the time, if they knew what I was doing, it would have been bad for me. Bad. Because I had a very highly public position, and it would have been bad. But I did what I had to do to keep all of my work quietly and my business quiet, even though I was growing on the social media side of things, but I still was working in this very high level role. So that's just something just to keep in mind. Chris Anderson 3297 says, literally hopping on everyone's live saying Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Well, thank you, Chris Anderson. That's so kind of you. Hope you're doing well. We have Roar saying, Roar Mokatsi, hello, hello. Taylor Logan, hello, hello. Murek, we have Murek. Faith6252 says, it's hard for me to have many subscribers. I don't know what to do. Well, Marik, we can talk about it. So tell me a little bit about your channel and what you're doing. There's a lot of great people here on YouTube that talk about building up your channel and elevating your channel and etc. One of the people that I actually follow is Roberto Blake. He has some really great information about building your YouTube channel. I just feel like he gives the most unbiased insights on building channel. There's some other people on YouTube that give information out about channels and etc. And I just don't think they're unbiased. I don't think they're unbiased, but I like Roberto Blake. I think he has some really great insights there. So maybe somebody you want to take a look at. But I will just say, for me personally, what I've done in terms of being able to grow my channel is to do lives. I do a lot of lives. I do probably more lives than most people do. I go live at least 8 times a week. And that's just for me. And so I know that's helped. And sometimes you just have to find that topic that people want to learn more about. One of the topics that I found that people wanted to learn more about was boundaries and setting boundaries, which is the reason why I have this long live today that I'm doing, to just provide you all with some insight in terms of how to set boundaries. And that's something that people want to learn more about. So I believe just finding out what it is, being consistent is really important. I know people talk about consistency, and sometimes it can be hard. You have to find that platform that you want to be on, that you want to still continue to be consistent. So it's something just to keep in mind. I've grown quite a bit. I would say over the past, I don't know if I want to say a month. I don't think it's been quite a month. I literally have gained 169 subscribers. For my channel, I have a smaller channel. That's massive growth for me. I would typically gain a subscriber or two every like couple weeks or so. And the only difference is the topic. I'm talking a bit more about something that people actually really want to learn more about in terms of setting boundaries. So it's just something to keep in mind. Just I would check out, there's a lot of influencers out there. As I mentioned, I personally like Roberto Blake. I think he gives really good, honest, he gives channel reviews because that's his expertise. That's not my expertise. My expertise is helping you communicate at a higher level than your peers, so you can communicate confidently and concisely under pressure. That's me. But he gives content about, he does channel reviews on his channel, so it might be something to look at. I think he's got a program that you can sign up for him to review your channel. And he just gives good content. I think he gives really good content. And I would say I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I listen to a lot of people that are trying to grow their channel or give insights on growing channels. And I just find his information to be helpful. There is one creator, I'll tell you this. I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to, I don't want to disparage anyone. But there's one creator that specifically, I asked a question about signing, what should I do? Does YouTube push live content? And believe it or not, this creator told me no, YouTube really doesn't push lives like that. And I'll tell you, Mariki Faith 6252, that YouTube actually does. And this is a well-known creator. This is someone that has many followers. And I found that information to be incorrect. And I say that because sometimes you just have to find out what's going to work for you. You have to find out what works for you. There's YouTube Shorts as a way to gain subscribers. And there's live streams. If you're able to engage and really handle multitasking quite a bit, that gains subscribers. You also have just being able to promote your content across different platforms. That can help you also, and etc. There's a lot of things you can do to gain subscribers, but ultimately, I would say this. Is it all about subscribers? Yes, it's important, but you just want to make sure you have the right subscribers. You don't want to have people that are not in alignment with your content, because what happens is YouTube is going to send that information out to those type of people. And then basically you're going to have those type of people come to your channel. I'll give you an example of this. People can buy views and etc. on YouTube. You can monetize your channel tomorrow if you wanted to. But what are you going to deal with after that? You're going to have a lot of people that are not in your target audience that you want to communicate with that are going to be subscribers on your channel. And it's just something I highly wouldn't recommend to do. Just be focused on providing value and helping out people as much as you can, and something will land for you. I will say, for me, boundaries was a big topic that people want to learn more about, especially as leaders. And so that's something I've been really heavily focusing on in December, because I really want to help my subscribers go to that next level in terms of my target audience who I work with. In terms of my executive coaching and consulting practice, I work with women in leadership to help them communicate concisely under pressure. But on my YouTube channel, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, I have women and men in leadership that are both on my channel. And I have people that are at the point where they are not leaders just yet, but they want to learn more about it. And so I'm here to provide as much insight as I can. And that's what I've been doing. Hopefully that gives you some insight. Do what you can. Follow people that will help you. Roberta Blake is a good one. And that's just my humble opinion. But I would definitely look at the creators that are actually seem legit. Like, you can tell that they are actually trying to help and they actually have some really good insights. So that's what I would say. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. Cosmic Celestial 3434 says, hello there. Hello. How you doing today? Murik Faith 6252 says, I'm a YouTuber. I posted thing for Kenyans personally. I am from Kenya. Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And absolutely. So that's great that you're posting things for Kenyans. That's fantastic. So that's your audience. What specifically are you trying to post for Kenyans? Maybe dive into that a bit more. But it's great. I mean, you're posting right now, and posting will help you to get more traction. I've done so many lives now that YouTube has invited me to be a member of their live streamer research panel. And I've been on that since May of this year, and I'll be on it for the next year. So you can do it. Just keep posting, and you have to just post to figure things out. You figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work. It will come up for you. Just keep going. Not everybody is creating content. The world of content creating is very small, and you can absolutely do very, very, very well. Muriki Faith says 6252, can you be my subscriber? Sure, I'll take a look at your channel. And I do this a lot on my channel also, because there's individuals that are in the content creator world. There's somebody that mentioned they were a small content creator earlier, and I want to support you in any way that I can. I appreciate you all for joining me and subscribing to my channel and providing me with a lot of value here and just making life fun. This is so fun to me. I enjoy being able to help you all as much as I can, because I know how challenging it is out there as leaders when you're trying to figure out, well, what do I say? How do I say it? When do I say it? This is why I'm here, to be that person that can help you and you can have that hard conversation about. Because sometimes you just don't know what to say. You don't know who to talk to. You may have your friends that are not even in your level of leadership, and you're having a struggle and you're thinking, well, what do I do with this? I can't talk to my friends about it because they don't understand. That's why I'm here to help you. I can understand, and I understand what you're going through. So I'm here to support you anyway. That again. Olive Juice says, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you, Olive Juice. Thank you so much. High five for being here. I'm really here to help you any way that I can. And let's see, Miraki, and I feel like I'm saying your name wrong, friend. I'm sorry about that. But Miraki Face 6252 says, thank you. May God bless you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I hope God blesses you too. So I have one more other question that someone asked me as it relates to boundaries. And I think with this one, we'll probably wrap up here very soon. They asked a question for me specifically: what boundaries do I wish that I would have set earlier in my career? Okay, so for me, and I've talked about this actually on a video of mine specifically about boundaries that I would have set earlier in my career. It depends on the time you're in your career. But I believe the boundary that I would have set earlier would have been the time boundary. As we talked about earlier with Olive Juice a moment ago, in terms of setting those time boundaries and what do you need to do to start thinking about your side hustle and managing your time and being more direct and etc. I wish I would have done that a bit earlier. And the reason why I would have probably set that up a little bit earlier is because this is something that I felt as if led me to burnout in one of the roles that I was in, because I was spending too much of my time at work and on work. So there's a point in time where I started, and as Olive Juice mentioned at the very beginning, sometimes when you're in those roles and you are number one, you're the only person they've had in the roles and you're trying to elevate a department, you put a lot of work into it. So Hassan YLMAZ 6293 says, hey, how are you? I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for stopping by. We're talking about setting boundaries as leaders. But I used to work quite a bit. I would work 40, 50, 60 plus hour weeks. I would work in the morning, I'd work in the afternoon, and I would work in the evening. And it caused me to be burnt out. And I believe that if I would have done a bit better with my time boundary, then that's something that would have probably been able to help me quite a bit as it relates to managing my time better. When I was transitioning into working for myself and establishing my business and etc., this is something that I wish I would have, if I would have had the time boundary set before, I probably could have done a lot more in my career as it relates to starting my business than I was at that particular time. This is something that I did specifically. I could have done more if I worked on my time boundary a bit more. So that's the one boundary for me personally that I wish I would have set in advance. Now, let me know what boundaries you all feel like you need to set this upcoming year. As I mentioned, for those of you who are joining or still live, there's about 5 boundaries that I have seen people struggle with professionally as leaders over the years. And as you are transitioning into 2026 as a leader, this is something that I want you to just keep in the back of your mind in terms of what boundaries you might need to fine tune for this upcoming year. You may need to work on your time boundary, the money boundary, the energy boundary, the personal boundary, or the professional boundary. There may be a couple of boundaries that you might want to think about. And if you're at a point where you're trying to determine, well, by the end of next year, and let me know what some of your goals are for 2026 so we can talk about them and help you develop some strategies as a leader to help get you to those goals, especially as it relates to these time boundaries, and maybe even communicating. That'll probably help you as well. But let's talk about some of those goals. But I say this because many people do struggle sometimes with their goals because there's some boundary that they didn't have set. There's a lot of goals that in retrospect, now that I'm an executive coach, I have my own coaches I work with, that I have learned that if I would have had this boundary in place, I would have reached this milestone or this goal at a later point in time. And this is something that I've personally reflected on, which is the reason why I'm so incredibly passionate about this topic. I want you all to do very, very well as it relates to your boundaries. All right, so we have, let's see, I think you had trouble pronouncing my name. I did. So tell me, let me see how to pronounce this. Is it Hassan Lamaz? Is that how do you say it? How do you say your name? Let me know in the comments below, because I know I didn't say it right. And I tried, but I'm not exactly sure, because of course on YouTube, sometimes you can't really tell what's the first part of the person's name, what's the last part of their name, or is it all put together? So I'm sorry about that. I would definitely want to make sure I provide you with and say your name correctly. Now, I did want to mention to you all, there's a couple things happening. As many of you know, my vehicle's being wrapped today. That's why I'm able to work with you all and talk a bit more today specifically. So my vehicle's being wrapped today. There's a video I'm definitely doing about the wrap process. There's a lot of things about wrapping a vehicle I did not know. I'm doing a partial wrap on my vehicle, and it's specifically for my business. So if many of you are at a point where you're trying to gain more visibility, I'm in South Florida and I want to gain more visibility, then let me know. But I'll definitely will send that video to all of you, and to let you know what the process looks like, what the final process looks like. I'm sure everything will work out fine, hopefully according to the design, even though they have to tear a part off of my truck. I wasn't expecting to hear this morning. Had no idea. But it's something that's fun. Hopefully you all will enjoy it, and it's going to be a little bit of a different video for my channel, specifically because it's just different. It's different, but it is about business. And I would say for anyone that is looking to expand your business locally, it's something to maybe think about. Whenever I do some wrapping on or do a decal or something on my Porsche, then I'll let y'all know about that also. But it'll be a good video, and I'll send it to you when I'm finished with that. And okay, so let's see. Ahasaj, my name is Hassan. And it's Turkish name, and it means beautiful. Well, thank you, Hassan. Well, awesome. Thank you. Well, now I don't have your name completely said incorrectly. So I appreciate you so much for mentioning that. Another thing I want to mention to you also is that one of the boundaries, I would say the hardest boundary, because I had someone, they didn't ask me a direct question, but they said, the question was around this: what was the hardest boundary that you had to set professionally? And I'll share this with you. I know I've shared it before. And if you've heard the story, then don't worry. Just fast forward through this part if you're watching the replay. Excuse me just a second. Let's see. Hassan says, God bless you. Happy Christmas. Well, thank you. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas as well, Hassan. And thank you for stopping by. The hardest boundary that I have ever had to set was the time when, I think some of you heard this, the time when I did not receive my paycheck. And so for those of you who have heard the story, you feel free to keep going through it. But this was actually the hardest boundary I set. This was one of the hardest boundaries I've ever set professionally. I've never done this before in my life. What happened to me specifically, and Mind Leader, hello, says hello, hope you're doing well. But what happened to me specifically in this situation was many years ago. I was working at an office, and at that time, did not know this, but the office manager was embezzling money. And I didn't know the office manager was embezzling money. I just knew that there were times when I was supposed to receive a check and I didn't receive it on time. It just seemed a bit odd, a little bit, some. And I thought to myself, well, this is odd. Why does this keep happening? But later I found out the office manager was actually embezzling money. So that makes sense why I never got my check on time. But before I do that, my leader says you can call me Mimi. Hello, Mimi. Hope you're doing well today. Okay, so what happened specifically? There was a time where this happened so much that I just was fed up with it. I asked specifically for my paycheck at that time, and the office manager said, "Oh, I'll give it to you later this afternoon." Then she had an emergency and she left and she didn't give me the check. And I said, "Something's not right. Something is not right with this situation. What is it?" And so I went in the next day, and as I mentioned, this is the hardest boundary I've had to set. And I went into the next day and I sat there and I said, you know what? I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to treat anybody until I receive my paycheck, because there's something going on here. I've asked for my check, and this office manager continues to tell me some excuse why she can't give me the check. I've already worked for my income. What's the problem? And I saw the office manager. She said hello, and I said hello. Hope you're doing well, but I'm not seeing anybody else because I have not received my paycheck. So until I receive my paycheck, I'm not going to be seeing anybody else. And they scrambled and they gave me my check, and I left shortly after that. And I said, I'm not working here anymore. Now, why was that a hard boundary? Because I already had people that were there waiting to see me. But ultimately, you have to respect yourself. And you can't, if you're in a situation where you're going to let somebody just run over your boundaries like that, and that was my money boundary at that point, you have to be very, very aggressive with your time in terms of how you manage it. So just keep that in mind. That was my hardest boundary. It was the one I felt the most uncomfortable with, because the team would come to me and they would say, doctor, we're ready for you to do this. We're ready for you to do that. And I told them, I said, you all need to talk to the office manager, because I'm not seeing anybody right now. It was a hard boundary, but I needed to set it because I couldn't function like that. And I'm glad that I did, because I ended up doing something amazing after that. So just keep in mind, boundaries are really important. You're going to have those situations where you're going to have very hard boundaries to come up. And this is the reason why I'm so incredibly passionate about helping you all communicate at a higher level. If you're in my target audience and you're a woman in leadership, that is who I provide my executive one-on-one and coaching and consulting services to help you communicate confidently and concisely under pressure. That is what I do if you're a woman in leadership. If you're not a woman in leadership, you're going to learn a lot of information here on my channel that talks about how to really communicate at a higher level than your peers and communicate confidently as well. Even though we may not necessarily work together directly, we will interact here on YouTube, of course, and I'm here to help you any way that I can. So just keep that in mind. You're going to have these hard situations, and my mission here is to help you be prepared to respond to them in a way that still showcase your expertise and what you're trying to do. So I appreciate you all so much, and I'm going to go through a few more of the questions here in the chat. Saif Ali says hello. Actually, it's Saif Ali B1E8W. Said, let's talk each other. We will ask some questions. You will reply. Yes, so that's what I'm doing here. This is a live Q&A. We're about to wrap up here very soon on the Q&A. We've been live for about 160 minutes so far in terms of how to get you all set up and ready for boundaries in 2024. So I appreciate you all being here. And for those of you who have just joined or have joined and came in and off, I appreciate you so much for spending time with me today to go through this very special live. I wanted to do this for my audience and help you all any way that I can. We've had some really fantastic discussions here about setting boundaries, and I appreciate all of you who mentioned a lot of information about boundaries and etc. You all have been great as always, and you've learned a lot. So take a moment, review the replay if you want to. Just learn about setting boundaries. You'll hear from other people's experiences, what they're struggling with, what their challenges have been, and etc. to help you really go to that next level so that you can set your boundaries. Many people struggle with boundaries because they don't know what to say and how to say it. And we've talked a bit about that in the live today. James Graham 100 says, hello, welcome back, James. How you doing today? Nathaniel HQ5BW, I'm not sure what you're referring to. James Graham 100 says, I love your Christmas tree behind you. It has so many gorgeous decorations. Well, thank you. The Christmas tree, I did all of this on Amazon, James, and that's where I got everything from. All right, we have Connor Riley D9I says, hey, Queen. Hello, Connor. Connie, how you doing today? And we have Nags Rav Vlogs. Hi, how are you, ma'am? Hello, welcome back. How you doing today? And Nags Rav's Vlogs says, like done, sis. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming back because I know you've been here before. So welcome back. We have Nicholas H6 says, hi there. Hello, Nicholas. How are you doing today? Let me know what questions you all have about setting boundaries. Are there any boundaries you're struggling with? We're about to wrap up the live today. We've been live for 162 minutes so far. So we've been talking about boundaries for a very long time. And I'd like to know if you have any other questions as it relates to live. I went over all of the questions that was asked to me before. I've shared with you what was my most difficult boundary that I had to set. That was very hard for me, and I want to make sure that I am providing you all with the support that you need to help you be able to have an amazing 2026 and do and accomplish many of the goals that you're trying to accomplish this upcoming year. So just let me know in the comments below if you have any questions specifically as it relates to setting boundaries. One of the questions that I've been asked multiple times is about the energy boundary. And I'll talk about that briefly while I'm waiting for another question to come in. The energy boundary, I would say, is the one that people struggle with because they don't really know, well, what does it mean and how does this happen? The energy boundary is that boundary that you absolutely want to pay very, very close attention to. And how do you do that? We talked about this briefly in the live, but I want to mention it for those of you who are present today. We have OPPK FRM 63rd. Hello, how you doing today? We struggle with the energy boundary because we don't know how to manage it. And a great rule of thumb of how you can envision the energy boundary and etc. includes the following. The energy boundary is your ability to determine how much energy are you going to give for this specific type of project and what you plan on doing. For example, if you have a project that's going on specifically at this particular position and it's going to take you a lot of energy to be able to do that, then guess what? This is something that you absolutely want to just pause on and say, I do not have the energy to do this today. Control your energy, because if you give out too much of it when you're working, you may find yourself very tired later in the day. So be mindful of your energy boundary. And if someone comes to you and says, oh, I need you to work on this project right now, then you may say, hold on just a second. Give me just a few moments. I may need to do this at a later date. Are you okay with that? So those are a couple things just to keep in mind. All right, we have James OG40. Hello, James. How are you doing today? We have Nice Hi from Australia. Well, welcome, James. Hope you're doing fantastically well. We are talking about setting boundaries, and we have been talking about setting boundaries for 165 minutes so far. So we're about to actually wrap up the live. We've went over many scenarios as it relates to setting boundaries and etc. James says, where are you from? I am from the United States. I'm based out of the Sunshine State of Florida. That's where I am right now. So we've talked a bit about boundaries and setting boundaries. And if you're watching the replay or watching the live, feel free to let me know what challenges you're having as it relates to boundaries in a workplace setting. So let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to help you any way that I can. There are a couple boundaries that a couple of my audience members have talked about over the years, specifically as women in leadership. And sometimes those boundaries are the personal boundaries and the professional boundaries. Sometimes what happens when we are in different roles, that people will try to test you, so to speak, and test your boundaries. Let me know if this has ever happened to you before. But people will sometimes try to test your boundaries and give you a hard time. They may ask you to do different types of projects all at the same time, and you know you're not going to be able to do that. So it's just something to keep in mind as you are transitioning into 2026, that you want to make sure you're keeping these boundaries the way that they need to be. Richard Spanish 9991, hello, hope you're doing well. And absolutely. So let me know if you all have any additional questions as it relates to boundaries and setting them. I will absolutely share with you any other insights that will be helpful. Most of you have joined to ask questions. There's one question specifically that was asked that I will send the individual a timestamp for and provide you with some insight to help them be able to set those boundaries. If you have any other topics or questions, let me know. On this channel, I specifically focus on a couple things, specifically on advanced communication skills. So if you are in a leadership role, you will benefit from subscribing to the channel because you're going to learn some advanced communication skills. If you happen to be a woman in leadership, you're in my direct target audience in terms of who I work with on a one-on-one and group basis in terms of being an executive coach and a consultant. But if you happen to be a man in leadership or someone that is not a leader just yet and just trying to learn a little bit more about it, you're going to learn a lot of universal information here, specifically on this channel, that will help you stand out from everybody else. So James says, what do you think is a boundary that's too far? So so James, I know you just joined, and there's a couple boundaries that we've talked about. Sorry, I hit my lamp here. So there's a couple boundaries that we've talked about that you might want to consider as you're transitioning, and we'll talk about boundaries. And I feel like for boundaries in general, there's 5 categories professionally. There's a lot of other boundaries, but I'm focusing on the professional things right now. You have the time boundary, the energy boundary, the money boundary, the personal boundary, and the professional boundary. All of these boundaries are there. And I would say, when you're asking your question, what do I think is a boundary that's too far? Any of those boundaries, because if you're not able to do what it is that you're trying to do in your role, in your career, in your life, and one of these boundaries is just someone has crossed it, or you just don't have it set, it can cause you a lot of problems. So I would say focus on the 5 boundaries I mentioned. There's a lot more. I'm just sharing with you over the past 20 years what I've noticed that can help you be able to fine-tune and develop your boundaries. We have Eldorado 1244 says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Eldorado. Glad you're here today. We have Aroso 69. Can you give me a birthday shout out, please? My name is Nick Gurr. Hello, Nick. Happy birthday. I hope you're doing fantastically well today. Eldorado 1244 says, beautiful tree. Well, thank you. I appreciate that so much, and I appreciate you stopping by today. So let me know what other questions you all have, and there's a lot of videos here you want to definitely check out on my live tab. If you're trying to elevate how you communicate as a leader, some of my most popular and common lives are going to be how to think on your feet, how to manage your emotions under pressure, how to control your eye contact, how to have difficult conversations, and how to manage your tone of voice, how to speak confidently, interview preparation, salary negotiation. All of those specifically are going to help you as you are transitioning to 2026. There's several videos on my live tab. You'll see that. And I have some pre-recorded videos as well. As you're watching the videos, and if you see something that you like, or maybe you have a question that you want to ask me specifically about that topic, then just let me know in the comments below. I will absolutely give you some really good insight to help you go to that next level or address whatever challenges that you're facing right now. So I appreciate you all so much, and thank you so much for sticking with me and being with me during this extended live. This is definitely longer than the lives I normally do. And for those of you who are new to me, I typically go live Tuesday through Friday in the morning, in the afternoon. This week specifically, because it's Christmas here, I will not be live as often as I normally am. It just depends on what's going on. But I wanted to make sure I provided you all with some tremendous value today. I hope you gain a lot of great insights in terms of how you can start setting boundaries, how you can communicate those boundaries, and etc. I appreciate you all so much, And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next video. And thank you for being subscribers. If you like this content, of course, subscribe and like the video. And share it to a friend or colleague that you know is in a leadership role that's trying to really elevate. And if you have someone that's a woman in leadership that might be struggling a bit or just trying to elevate how they are stepping into 2026, then send them my way. They can sign up for a strategy session in the description below, and we'll have a conversation about where they are and where they want to go and how I can help them get there. I hope you all have a very, very Merry Christmas if I don't see you before then. If not, I'll see you when I go live tomorrow. Bye for now.